Chapter 177. Is there going to be a spark? Chapter 177. Is there going to be a spark? Yimo arranged Yunbing and Tingting into Yiling's room while he slept in Yi Zifeng's room. Tingting had been very tired going from Hong Kong to Beijing. She went to bed early after having a shower. However, Yunbing stayed on the bed unable to sleep. She was thinking about what Yimo was doing and how he knew that she was forcefully sent to the O family. Yimo, however, was looking through those materials in the room. He was still missing a few materials to make the flying sword. So he packed them away and took out the map Imo Kong drew him. If what Imo Kong said was true, then he must go to that place. Even if there wasn't space abyssal rock, those precious herbs would be very important to him. After cultivating for 2 hours, Yimo was prepared to sleep when his door was knocked. Yimo subconsciously scanned out with his spirit sense and saw Yunbing wearing her pajamas standing at the door. Her face was still a bit red. Sick? Didn't really look like it. Yimo opened the door and was just about to talk when Yunbing rushed into his arms. He felt a soft, pleasant, scented body as his head buzzed. He just cultivated and his blood was gushing. At this time, Yunbing rushed into his arms, and so he was astonished. Yunbing didn't think much. She was just really grateful to Yimo from the depth of her heart. If it wasn't for Yimo, she wouldn't even be able to see Tingting and would have probably died a few months ago. Yimo gave her a sense of security. She really liked that feeling. It made her peaceful and she really enjoyed it. When Yimo left, she always longed for that feeling. Sometimes, she thought she shouldn't. She was a few years older than Yimo, and Yimo was her student. How could she think like that? But today on the bed, she kept thinking about Yimo. She really couldn't fall asleep. She pumped courage for herself for a long time before finally having the guts to knock on Yimo's door. She really liked sleeping beside Yimo. That sense of comfort and serenity, she really liked it. Furthermore, in her heart, Yimo was impotent, so he couldn't do anything. Even if she slept by Yimo, Yimo wouldn't do anything to her. When Yimo treated Ning Qingxue and saw her busty white chest, he was also a bit itchy at heart. He hugged Luo Susu, and Lu Susu even kissed him when he was unconscious. Although it wasn't intentional, his heart still rippled after thinking about it. But no matter what, he had never felt such a hot sensation like now. Yunbing was like a ball of fire, a soft ball that gradually surrounded him. He just finished cultivation, and this soft heat latched onto him, making him unable to hold on. He never had sex, but it didn't mean he didn't know about it. His body immediately started to react. The moment Yunbing hugged Yimo closely, she was so comfortable she almost moaned. After a long time, she could finally fall asleep in Yimo's arms. Even if the O family took revenge on them tomorrow, at least she had a great night. But Yunbing immediately felt something was wrong. She felt a hot, sturdy rod against her stomach. What was it? She subconsciously grabbed it. Oh! She immediately reacted. Before she was fully aware of what happened, she was so scared she ran out of the room and went into her own. She closed the door and breathed heavily. Yimo's body wasn't what she thought it was. He was very normal. After a long time, Yunbing asked herself, why did she run? She went over there, meaning that she wouldn't mind it. Yunbing understood that the reason she had the guts to knock on Yimo's door was because she knew Yimo couldn't do that. But the reality was the opposite. Not only could Yimo do that, he was also very sturdy and healthy. At least she grabbed it with her own hands, and it was really... Yunbing felt her face was hot and started to regret. She should have stayed. She suddenly really wanted it. But she had the courage to go to Yimo's room because she didn't think about it. Now that she thought about it and knew that Yimo could do it, she no longer had the courage to go over. She suddenly really hoped Yimo would come and call her over, and she would immediately go. She felt her face was burning and heart pumping fast. For 28 years, she never had such thoughts and strong desires. After a long time, Yimo didn't call her and her heart gradually cooled. She suddenly felt ashamed for having such thought. She felt she was trying to entice Yimo. Yimo didn't expect Yunbing to scream and run after finding out that he was normal and felt a little awkward. He understood why Yunbing came. Although Yimo was aroused by Yunbing just then, he was a cultivator. After a few spirit-cleansing chants, he suppressed his fire. Yimo laid on the bed reminiscing Yunbing. Her body was very soft and bouncy. He had seen her nude before, but never like today with fire and desperation. He remembered that Tian-He. She was also wearing pajamas and hugged him. He remembered he also reacted that day. Was it related to what he was cultivating? How could he not deal with this little enticement? Although Yemo didn't know why Yun Bing came to find him at night, he knew that since she came, she wouldn't reject him too much. If he went now and shamelessly pursued her, perhaps she would agree. Yemo shook his head. He felt that if something happened between him and Yun Bing now, it would be complete lust. Although he felt Yun Bing was a good person, he wasn't at the degree of falling in love with her. Love? Yemo suddenly thought of Luo Ying and Lu Susu. The two seemed to move about in front of his eyes, and they overlapped each other. This feeling was very strange. He even wanted to grab Luo Susu's hand and ask if she was Luo Ying, but Luo Susu was in her 20s, and she didn't seem to be in the same situation as him. How could she be Luo Ying? In the morning, Yemo found that Yun Bing had already made breakfast. Yun Bing was still a bit embarrassed to look at Yemo. She didn't even dare to meet eyes with Yemo. However, Yemo didn't care. He ate breakfast and played with Ting for a while before saying, "Sister Bing, I'm going out to do something and going back to Luotsang in the afternoon. Are you still going back to Ninghai? You live at Luotsang now?" Yun Bing suddenly remembered she hadn't asked where Yemo lived at now. Although she knew that the O family probably feared Yemo a little, but Yemo lived at Luotsang and she lived at Ninghai. The O family couldn't deal with Yemo, but they could do something to her and Ting. "I'm living at Luotsang now, but..." Yemo saw the worry in Yun Bing's eyes and thought for a while before saying, "Don't worry about the O family. I will remove this threat for you." Yemo's phone couldn't be reached again. Just when Han Zixin was worried, he received news that Yemo came to Beijing and caused some trouble at the O family. Han Zixin's eyes brightened up. He was just thinking about how to make Yemo submit himself. But now Yemo went to start trouble with the O family. This Yemo was a restless one. "Brother Han, are you thinking of some nasty idea again? Making me do free labor?" Just when Han Zixin was thinking about how to make Yemo do things for him willingly, Yemo's voice suddenly appeared by his ear, scaring Han Zixin that he almost jumped. His place was heavily guarded. How did the guards not notice him when Yemo came? "How did you come in?" Han Zixin looked at Yemo in surprise and asked. Yemo smiled and said, "It's not important how I came in. What's important is what you want with me. Otherwise, I'm going back. I'm really busy lately. I don't have time to chat with you." Han Zixin laughed and put aside how Yemo came in. He thought if Yemo didn't have some power, he wouldn't need him in the first place. "Of course I need your help. You must not decline. It's said very clearly on our agreement last time." Han Zixin quickly said. He was afraid Yemo would say he had no time. Yemo smiled and said, "Indeed, I especially took out the agreement and looked. It said very clearly, I will do something for flying snow once every 2 years, and this first time was after I chose real materials. Now, I haven't chosen anything yet. How can you make me help you? This is said clearly on the paper. Do you want me to show you?" Hearing Yemo's words, Han Zixin rubbed his head helplessly. He thought that he didn't need Yemo for normal things, and flying snow could deal with the problems 99% of the times, so he asked for Yemo to help once in 2 years. He didn't expect the trouble to come quick, so he had to beg Yemo to help. That's correct, but I really need your help this time. Although Zhangju is not bad, he is still missing something." Han Zixin knew he had no right to ask for Yemo to help this time, but he really couldn't find anyone better than Yemo. Yemo sneered but didn't talk. Although his cultivation was progressing slow now, but he didn't want to waste time on this. He would do as he said, and it wasn't yet time to fulfill his promise yet. "I can help you deal with the O family, and the O family is prepared to make a move on you," Han Zixin suddenly said. Yemo said plainly, "They are not a threat. The reason I didn't do anything yesterday was because Ting was there. So I don't need you to mind this thing. Don't do something rash," Han Zixin quickly said. Chapter 178. O Family's Dependence. Chapter 178. O Family's Dependence. Yemo knocked the table before slowly saying, "Perhaps I won't just be doing that." Then he stood up. He was now stage 3 Qi gathering. If the O family dared to make a move, then he was prepared to exterminate them and then go exterminate the Song family before finding the hidden sections. Although he knew he probably won't get far with his current power in the hidden sects, he believed he could at least stay alive. Wait, what's your condition? I'll see if I can do it. Seeing that Yimo was going to leave, Han Zixin finally couldn't sit down anymore. He believed that if Yimo were to go, it would be much harder to find him again. Yimo smiled, thinking he fell for it. He turned around and looked at Han Zixin. The girl behind you last time was your granddaughter? Han Zixin thought. Does he have an interest in her? He felt joyful but pretended to be angry and said, Don't think about my granddaughter. She's not ordinary. Normal people can't even begin to think about her. Although you are not bad, but I think, sigh, it's still a bit hard. Han Zixin knew that it was hard to find a person in the mortal world to marry her, but he really admired Yimo's abilities. If he really did like his granddaughter, then he wouldn't mind helping him. Yimo said once again, Elder Han, you're thinking too much. Your granddaughter is so excellent. How do I dare to think about her? Plus, I already have someone I like. Don't worry about it, Elder Han. Then what do you mean? Han Zixin asked annoyedly. Yimo said, If I guessed right, your daughter is from the hidden sects, right? My first condition is simple. That is, after I've done what you want, your granddaughter will lead me into the hidden sections. As long as I go in, she doesn't need to do anything else. Keep dreaming. Han Yin with an ice-cold face walked in. She was hiding behind the door while listening to Yimo's request. She quickly stepped out, fearing that her grandpa would agree. Yimo smiled and didn't say anything. He knew where Han Yin was hiding. If he could enter the hidden sects with Han Yin's help, it would save him a lot of time. Even someone as rich as Mo Kong spent 16 years knowing the way and how to get Indiana. As such, this made Yimo worry about getting in the hidden sections. Han Zixin waved his head. Don't mention this. This isn't something that only Yin Air could decide. If she brought you in, she wouldn't be able to get away with it herself. What's your second condition? Yimo shook his head and said, Since we can't even agree on the first, there's no use talking about the second. Han Zixin's mouth spasmed, thinking that this guy really stood firm. He turned and said to Han Yin, Bring that or and show him. Hearing about or, Yimo's ear moved and immediately focused his attention. Han Yin walked over helplessly and took out a wooden box. She opened it, and there was a pale green organ. It seemed like jade, but Yimo could tell it wasn't jade. Yimo took the stone and scanned it with his spirit sense. Green silver sand? You know this stone? This is a stone. Why do you call it sand? Han Yin subconsciously asked. Yimo put down the stone and said, This stone is useless for you. You can give it to me and count it as my first condition. If Yimo had this ore, then he would only be missing 2 materials to make his flying sword. Han Yin sneered. Good things are useless to me. You really overestimate yourself. Tell me, why is this big rock called sand? Yimo explained. Of course it's called sand. Did you think sand had to be very small? I've seen green silver sand much bigger than this, at least 10 times bigger. Han Yin had a look of disbelief. This guy really knew how to bluff. If Grandpa didn't value him so much, she would teach him a lesson. Although he was not bad, but he should probably be a far cry from her. But Grandpa had to say she couldn't do this alone and needed Yimo's help. Han Zixin laughed and said, Okay, this is yours. Let's hear your second condition. Yimo spoke. The second condition is, of course, to kick the O family out of the Beijing upper class. If you can't even do this, then I'd rather not have your green silver sand. It was impossible not to take the green silver sand. Yimo wanted to see how powerful Han Zixin was. If it wasn't enough, then he would do it himself. The O family was scarier than the Song family. Yimo could tell from O Jinlong's arrogant expression. The Song family didn't dare to touch his family before something happened to him, but the O family dared to do so. Yi Ling and Yi Zifeng were still at Beijing. Han Zixin thought for a while before saying, O family is nothing to worry about. However, they have one in the politics and one in martial arts. O Tanya, don't worry about him. Although he has a pretty high position, but he has done too much illegal things. The reason we haven't brought him down is because of the other person in the O family. He's called O Tanhu. He is a madman. He came from the hidden sects and isn't the least bit reasonable. Even we can't do anything about him. After he murders, he will escape to the hidden sects and come back after a while. We don't know why he can come and go out of the hidden sections. That time in Beijing, never mind, let's not talk about this. I presume he might even be stronger than you. Not even yin air is a match for him. So before something happens to O Tanhu, I wouldn't touch the O family, but I can help you resolve the issue. Yimo sneered and said, No need, I'll deal with it myself. I'm genuinely trying to warn you, although you're not bad, but I feel you're not as strong as O Tanhu. Once you completely piss them off and O Tanhu is involved, then that would be a certain death situation, Han Zixin worriedly said. Yimo didn't reply Han Zixin and said to himself, I need to go back to Luotsang once. Didn't you say you agreed to help me once? Why are you going back to Luotsang now? I haven't told you what I need help with, Han Zixin quickly said. Yimo thought that if he went back to Luotsang and this O Tanhu did things without thinking consequences, then it would be really bad. Although he was like that too sometimes, he still had his sense. He did everything with a purpose. However, he heard this O Tanhu was a madman. After he did those crazy things, there would be no use even if he killed him. Thinking about this, Yimo said, You should know where I used to live in Ninghai, right? This I know? Han Zixin's old face blushed. He had done his research on Yimo. He even knew that Yimo was the masqueraded Shi Ying at Ninghai. Yimo also knew that Han Zixin would definitely investigate him, but he didn't mind it. He said, Send someone to come get some grass with me and help me plant it in my flower pot at where I live in Ninghai. Oh, and tell Su Wei that I planted it and ask her to help me look after it for a few days. Of course, Han Zixin agreed without hesitation. Okay, I'll be going first. Prepare to deal with the O family. Don't make me do it. If I do it, it won't be in the way you want. I will deal with O Tanhu. After I'm done with the O family, then you tell me what I need to do. Yimo turned and left, of course, not forgetting about the green-silver sand. Seeing Yimo was still adamant on taking on the O family and even O Tanhu after his persuasion, Han Zixin wanted to say something but eventually didn't. Grandpa, do you want me to help him? Han Yin knew O Tanhu wasn't someone easy to deal with. Han Zixin shook his head and said, If he really could finish O Tanhu, then I'll take this opportunity to remove the O family. But if he isn't a match for O Tanhu and still goes to fight him ignoring my persuasion, then there's no benefit in him participating in this. It could only mean that I picked the wrong person. A person so impulsive cannot take this mission of mine. But Grandpa, I feel that Yimo is a very impulsive person, Han Yin said. Han Zixin shook his head. Not necessarily, although Yimo is impulsive, he doesn't seem to be that impulsive. Plus, this time, the O family has decided to make a move on Yimo, but I just haven't told him yet. I wanted to use this mission to draw him away from Beijing to escape O Tanhu, but he insists on fighting, so we'll see how strong he really is. Grandpa, what if he really could kill O Tanhu? Han Yin suddenly felt that Yimo wasn't that simple. From how she didn't realize he got in the door today, she realized that she couldn't completely read him. If O Tanhu really is no match for Yimo, then things would be good. Some things really need to be managed. Hidden sects, they are a hidden calamity. Although they don't come out to fight for power, but the occasional one or two who comes out can immediately upset the balance. Han Zixin sighed. After a long while, Han Zixin stood up again and said, No matter if Yimo can succeed, we must prepare. Yin air, I'm going out. Once Yimo comes back again, it would mean that he has finished O Tanhu. Then you can tell him the thing. If he didn't, then never mind. Chapter 179. The Killing Blow That Was Not Used. Chapter 179. The killing blow that was not used. Yimo returned home, but Yun Bing wasn't there. After he gave the grass to the person Han Zixin sent, he was prepared to call Yun Bing when the door opened by itself. At the door stood a sturdy man in his 30s. His hair was long and his forehead was broad. If it wasn't for that triangular-shaped eyes, he would look quite majestic. But that triangular eyes ruined the overall image and made him seem violent. You got balls. How dare you go on a rampage at my O family? Although the man's voice was low, it had this sharpness in its tone that made people feel uncomfortable. Yimo stopped what he was doing and looked at the man before calmly saying, You are O Tanhu? Not bad. The O family acted quite fast. Indeed, I'm O Tanhu. Young man, you have balls, but if you think the O family is a sissy like the Song family, then you just wait and die. 21 years ago, there was a big family that was no lesser than the current 5 big families. Do you know how they disappeared? Indeed, you got it. My Xiong one. And I killed them in one night, regardless of old and young. It seems it's your Yi family this time. Don't worry, I will make it clean. At most, I'll just hide for another few years. O Tanhu seemed to be smiling, but his cold tone didn't have the slightest feeling of a smile. Yimo's eyes frowned, thinking this person was so sinister. Even he didn't plan on killing the entire Song family. At most, he would the main members and kick them out of Beijing. No matter what, Yimo was not planning to let this man go. He was too cruel, and that Xiong he mentioned was also very evil. Once in conflict with these type of people, one must kill them immediately, or there would be unfathomable consequences. You just got here? Yimo suddenly thought of Yunbing. She wasn't here. Could she be taken away by the O family? O Tanhu sneered. You don't have much of a future. We martial artists can have woman any time and place we want, but you're still thinking about her even now. Yimo didn't expect O Tanhu to know what he was thinking with just one sentence. This guy was no impulsive man like Han Zixin described. He was obviously a cunning person. Yimo sighed. If O Tanhu was really impulsive, he would have been long dead. It seemed that Han Zixin was also tricked by O Tanhu's facade. Where do you want to fight? Lead the way. Whether or not Yunbing was taken away by the O family people, he needed to finish O Tanhu now. You're bold. Then, O Tanhu didn't even look at Yimo and went downstairs. Yimo closed the door and followed O Tanhu onto his car without asking a question. He could tell that O Tanhu was strong, but he was still a little weaker than Dao Xian. He could kill Dao Xian, so why would he worry about an O Tanhu? But this man was at most in his teens 21 years ago, and he could still kill old and young. It could be seen how cruel he was. It was such a waste that he didn't live in the cultivation realm. O Tanhu seemed to know that Yimo would follow him. He got in a Range Rover and drove to the rural areas. He knew that Yimo must be decent, but it would cause too much attention in the city. That wouldn't benefit him killing the Yi family later. Yimo scanned O Tanhu with his spirit sense. It appears that he came bare-handed, but his real weapon was a short sword that was packed at his chest. Plus, O Tanhu was tall and big, thus that small sword was covered by his clothes. O Tanhu didn't drive very far. As soon as they left the city, he stopped by an abandoned sewer station. Perhaps to him, it would only be a few minutes before he killed Yimo. O Tanhu got off the car and looked at Yimo with a sneer. No need to say any last words. Your Yi family will end today. But don't worry about Yunbing, although I haven't taken her away, but I really want to know what a woman who you can't forget tastes like. Yimo suddenly closed his eyes as though O Tanhu was just air. F***ck, you want to die? O Tanhu was very angry and suddenly punched towards Yimo's chest. Before his fist arrived, the wind arrived. Yimo saw O Tanhu's anger but shook his head. He didn't think O Tanhu would be angered so easily. No matter what O Tanhu was like, he underestimated Yimo. He thought he could easily take out Yimo and didn't need waste time talking to him, but he was also someone who could be easily taken out in Yimo's eyes. Yimo struck out his fist without hesitation, and it collided with O Tanhu's fist. O Tanhu sneered. This punk dared to clash fists with him. His fist was originally going to be a hollow attack, and he was going to cut Yimo in half when he dodged. He didn't like to waste time. Although he could still kill Yimo without using the sword, he would never go for a harder way if there was an easier way. Now that Yimo dared to clash fists with him, he turned his hollow attack into a real attack and smashed with full force towards Yimo's chest. He was confident he would shatter Yimo's arms and crush Yimo's chest. The instant their fists clashed, O Tanhu knew it wasn't good. The inner chi Yimo had on his fists were much purer than the inner chi he had. Yimo was an inner chi master. The moment O Tanhu realized this, his back immediately sweated. He underestimated Yimo too much. He shouldn't have used all his power in that fist and should have left some power. If he saved some power, he could still change his attack or even take out his sword and kill Yimo. But now, that was impossible. Their fists have clashed. Otanhu just felt as though his fists hit steel, but this was not over. After the steel shattered his bones, it reached out and grabbed his fist. Otanhu was regretting it so much. If he didn't change his movim, kept his punch a hollow attack, and then sneak attacked Emo with his sword, he was 90% sure it would hit Emo. My Sure Xiong will exact revenge for me. These were Otanhu's last words. My Sure Xiong will exact revenge for me. These were Otanhu's last words. Otanhu was very decisive, and Emo wasn't able to ask anything useful from him. He was not only cruel to others, but cruel to himself as well. However, Emo found 2 words, broken fists, from the hilt of that sword. The work was not bad, same quality as that whip Emo got. When Emo went back home, Yunbing and Tingting had come back. After asking, he knew that Yunbing went out to help Tingting buy clothes. Now that he had pulled out the tooth of the O family, Emo estimated that there was not much danger for Yunbing, so he went for Han Zixin. He would leave the remaining things for Han Zixin to deal with. If he couldn't even do such a simple thing, it would mean that he was not genuine. For someone who wasn't genuine, Emo would rather not have the green silver sand than cooperating with them. Emo wouldn't be like Otanhu and go out killing everyone, but if Han Zixin didn't make an attack, then he would kill at least all the heads of the family. Why did you come back so fast? Weren't you going to look for Otanhu? Han Zixin wasn't at home, but Han Yin was. She seemed to be immune to Emo popping in and out of nowhere. Emo dropped the sword and sighed. There's no longer such a person. What? You killed Otanhu this quick? Han Yin picked up that sword in disbelief and checked it carefully before saying, Indeed, this is his sword. It has the mark of the Broken Fist Hall. Broken Fist Hall? Emo repeated. He still remembered that Otanhu said his Sure Xiong would avenge him, so he need to be wary. Since his Sure Xiong could kill an entire big family with him, it meant that this Sure Xiong was also a cruel character. Han Yin seemed to realize she said something she shouldn't have and quickly said again, Wait, I'll call my grandpa. Miyang Lake was the most beautiful lake in Beijing. Not only was it beautiful, but it also crossed a sixth of Beijing, so it was also called a sixth lake. Miyang Lake not only had an army stationed there from the Beijing military district, but all the upper class and leaders of Beijing were living around here. Thus, Miyang Lake was also called the wealthy lake by normal citizens. At this moment, in the most heavily guarded building sat 6 old men. Even the youngest among them was older than 50. Zixin, you're saying that Emo really has enough capability to finish Otanhu? This isn't a joke. If that ferocious tiger is pissed off, the Yi family would also be in danger. The person speaking was in his 60s, middle build, and seemed slightly slim, but his spirit was high. Han Zixin said, Director, don't worry. If Emo really is no match for Otanhu, I have made preparations. I won't let what happened 20 years ago happen again. Yes, we'll get rid of that tiger even if it costs something. Even without Emo, we would still do this. This Otanhu is getting more and more out of control. The old man nodded and said hardly. No one else spoke. They knew it would cost them heavily to kill someone like Otanhu. There was an ancient martial arts cultivator who was weaker than Otanhu, but in order to capture him, the country lost an entire special forces before finally killing him. One special forces squad, how much would it cost for a country to train them? It could be imagined that in order to capture Otanhu, the losses wouldn't be a simple number. Because behind Otanhu, there was a hidden sect. If they angered this sect, then the country's losses would be inestimable. This was why all hierarchy felt threatened by the hidden sects, because they had the capability. Good thing was they usually didn't intervene in national affairs, and even send some people to help with things. This Otanhu was also very cunning. After he did that thing 20 years ago, he went and hid in the hidden sects for 10 years before coming out. Each time, he didn't come out for long, as though reminding others that the O family still had him. If Emo could kill Otanhu, it would be the best for the country because the person who killed him was Emo. Eventually, the hidden sects would go look for Emo's trouble, not someone else. Although some hidden sects people work for the country, the hidden sects also had a rule in which the people from hidden sects must not fight each other for outside world reasons. If they did, perhaps the hidden sects would have been long gone. Only someone like Emo, who didn't know anything, dared to kill O Tamhu. The old man, who was about the same age as Han Zixin, said, I heard Emo finished off Nanqing's Qianlong too. If he really has so much power, then perhaps he really can. Before Han Zixin spoke, a guard rushed in with a phone and said, Elder Han, an urgent call. All the people here in this meeting were the hierarchy of China. Even if the guard didn't say it was urgent, they knew it would be urgent. Han Zixin picked up the phone, and it only took a few sentences before hanging up in joy. What is it, old Han? The most impetuous old man asked. Han Zixin said with joy and surprise, I just received news that Emo killed O Tanhu and is now talking with Han Yen. The news is from my granddaughter. It will be reliable. What? That evil tiger of the O family has been killed? Zixin, Shiping, immediately carry out number 2 plan. Subjugate O Tanya and O Zhan. The old man stood up in excitement and said. Not only did this man stand up in excitement, but so did everyone else. It was 2 different concepts, Emo killing O Tanhu and the country killing O Tanhu. Without O Tanhu, the O family was not a concern. Han Yin put the phone down and looked at Emo, thinking that the old man was always wiser. She didn't see anything extraordinary about Emo, but her grandpa could. Feng Rong was in a rush and quickly walked inside a bar with his head low. Yunbing suddenly really wanted to ask Feng Rong about what happened those years ago and followed him into the bar. Of course, Emo knew when Yunbing suddenly left. He saw that Yunbing didn't even tell him and went into the bar with Feng Rong and guessed that there must be something going on. Emo also wanted to bring Tingting in with him when a voice interrupted him. Punk, I haven't been able to find you, but I finally met you here today. Bad luck. The person speaking seemed to be very angry, as though he had caught a long-time enemy. Punk, I haven't been able to find you, but I finally met you here today. Bad luck. The person speaking seemed to be very angry, as though he had caught a long-time enemy. Emo recognized who it was. It was Ching Sun from Hua University. It seemed that he resented him quite a bit, and probably thought of him as a love enemy. Brother Sun, who was this punk? A youth from behind Ching Sun walked up. His hair was dyed yellow, and had a girl that was younger than 20 in his arms. Ching Sun didn't turn around and casually said, This is the guy that tricked away Yang Qing. Didn't think I would meet him here. Qibing, call up a few people. I'm going to beat him until his dad doesn't even recognize him. But Brother Sun, what about Yang Qing? The yellow-haired youth casually asked. Ching Sun subconsciously looked at the bar ahead and said, Next time then, since I have one chance, I'll have another. But since we met him today, we can't let him escape. Emo sneered and couldn't even be bothered paying attention to Ching Sun. He carried Tingting and walked towards the bar. You want to die. Ching Sun saw Emo acting so arrogant, ignoring him and just walking away, causing him to immediately get triggered. He raised his hand and grabbed towards Emo, wanting to subjugate him. Although he couldn't fight on the streets, he couldn't let Emo get away. Ching Sun, what are you doing? As soon as Zhuo Yangqing and another girl walked to the door of the bar, she saw Ching Sun grab towards Emo. The moment she saw Emo, she felt really happy to be able to see him again. That day after Emo left, she had called him countless times, but wasn't able to reach him. She even thought Emo was lying, but her cousin Zhuo Huatang indeed recovered. Just as soon as Ching Sun heard Zhuo Yangqing's words, he felt this huge power kick into his chest. He was kicked flying a few meters away, crashing into a bin. Qibing also looked at Emo in shock, even forgetting to help Ching Sun up. He didn't expect Emo to be so strong. He clearly knew that even if he called up people, what could they do to him? Hurry up and piss off. Do you want me to kick you again? Emo yelled at the yellow-haired guy. Qibing reacted and quickly ran to Ching Sun. As he left, he added, You dare attack Ching Sun, you're goner. At this moment, Zhuo Yangqing had rushed in front of Emo. She also saw Emo's kick and yelled out in shock. Emo noticed the girl beside Zhuo Yangqing. She was as good-looking as Zhuo Yangqing. The delicate expression in her eyes made her seem more attractive than Zhuo Yangqing. Her eyes were big and seemed very innocent. At least, nothing unlikable could be seen from the surface. People couldn't help to like her just looking at her innocent and delicate look. Zhui Yangqing had reacted. She didn't expect Yimo to be so strong. It seemed he was not only a master of medicine, but also in martial arts. This made Zhui Yangqing excited as she charged up, grabbing Yimo and saying, "Dr. Yi, I didn't think you were so strong. Qing Sun is a member of our school's martial arts association." But soon, she found that Yimo's attention was on the girl who came with her. She pouted and said, "Hey, uncle, don't look at her with eyes like wolves, please. She is the prettiest girl in our school. Don't even think about it. Don't forget you're a big uncle." Zhui Yangqing immediately changed Yimo's title from doctor to uncle. She was rather unsatisfied. She came up to greet Yimo, but he treated her like air. Hearing Zhui Yangqing's words, the girl called Shuang Shuang walked up and shyly said, "Hello, senior student. I'm Yangqing's classmate, Nie Shuang Shuang." Yimo suddenly felt a little cold. He couldn't tell why he felt that way. His spirit sense noticed that when Nie Shuang Shuang looked at his kick, there was a ray of astute. She wasn't as shy as she acted at all. There was this sense from her that made him feel cold. Yimo's sense were right because he had spirit sense. This Nie Shuang Shuang wasn't simple, even a bit eerie. "You're Nie Shuang Shuang? Do you live in Beijing?" Yimo's questions made Zhui Yangqing more unhappy. It seemed that Yimo was really taking an interest into Nie Shuang Shuang. He had never asked who she was the first time he saw her. Nie Shuang Shuang lowered her head in worry. Although she was sure Yimo couldn't see, she didn't know Yimo had spirit sense, and her expression was caught completely by Yimo. Zhui Yangqing spoke at this moment. "Uncle Yimo, stop asking. Shuang Shuang is living at her auntie's house, and she doesn't really like to talk. If you want to ask something, just ask me. But don't chase Shuang Shuang. As for why, don't ask. Shuang Shuang is a person with misfortune. And she's scared of talking to guys." Yimo nodded. Although he didn't know Nie Shuang Shuang, but he knew she was completely wrong. His spirit sense found a rather strong sense of the other sex. This woman was not only not a shy girl, but instead a very lustful girl. He didn't know why Zhui Yangqing would stay with a girl like that, but Yimo knew it wasn't something he could manage. As long as it didn't harm her, he wouldn't care. But at this moment, Shuang Shuang secretly studied Yimo, and her eyes happened to be caught by Yimo. Her face blushed more. Of course, Zhui Yangqing also saw Nie Shuang Shuang's glance and felt annoyed. These two were mutually attracted and ignored her as though she was air. Was she that ugly? Yimo had decided to ask his sister about her. If his sister knew about her, she would tell his sister to stay away from her. This woman wasn't easy to mess with. He wanted to remind Zhui Yangqing, but he resisted the urge after seeing Zhui Yangqing's face. He casually said, "I have some business at the bar. You guys have fun? Wait, we also want to go to the bar. It's rare that Shuang Shuang want to come out for a drink, so I'll be going with her," Zhui Yangqing immediately said. Then, she looked at Tingting in Yimo's arms and asked, "Brother Yi, this girl is so cute. Who is she?" Yimo wanted to cry and laugh. In the short brief moment, Zhui Yangqing called him with 3 different things. He remembered what Qibing said. Qibing and Qing Sun obviously knew Zhui Yangqing was coming to this bar. How did they know? Thinking about this, Yimo casually asked, "Qing your uncle is my friend and you're still studying at school. It's not a good thing coming to the bar, especially this far from your school." "Pfft. Uncle, Brother Yi, how much older are you than me? Stop talking to me like that. Shuang Shuang wanted to come out for a drink today, not me. She said she liked here, so we came," Zhui Yangqing nonchalantly said. Then, she immediately said, "The recipe you gave us last time. My aunt has prepared it. Can you go back with me today?" Nie Shuang Shuang pulled Zhui Yangqing's clothes, wanting her to stop talking. However, Zhui Yangqing still said, "What are you scared of? We're all adults, just coming out for a drink." Yimo looked again at Nie Shuang Shuang, thinking that it was indeed because of her. It seemed that Zhui Yangqing was being sold and still counted money for her. This girl was too dumb, and this Nie Shuang Shuang was too insidious. Thinking about this, Yimo said, "In that case, let's go drink together, on me." The reason he wanted to help Zhui Yangqing was due to Zhua Igua. Zhua Igua was a good person, and he seemed to look after Zhui Yangqing quite a lot. "But Yangqing, sorry, I think Brother Yi is right, so I won't go." Nie Shuang Shuang spoke and secretly looked at Yimo. Her eyes were blossoming more red, rendering the sense of an innocent girl. Shuang, you're so pretty. No wonder Uncle Yi is interested in you. Even Zhuo Yangqing could see Nie Shuang's beauty. Yangqing, don't talk like that. I'm going back. You must have some business with Brother Yi. I won't disturb you guys. I'll be going first. Suddenly, Nie Shuang looked at Emo again before suddenly taking out a small pink paper from her pocket and giving it to Emo. Brother Yi. This is my number. Her voice was very soft. She didn't even say goodbye to Zhuo Yangqing and ran off. Her face still seemed flushed with embarrassment. Emo looked at the paper and shook his head, thinking that if it was a normal person, perhaps he would call her at night. However, she found the wrong person. Zhuo Yangqing said in a strange tone, Shuang, this girl is being anthemaniac today. I've never seen her give her phone number to someone else without being asked. Emo sneered. Never seen it? If she never did, would she make her phone number into such an exquisite card and put it in her pockets? It was obvious it was prepared. Brother Yi, don't tell me you're in love with Shuang? Zhuo Yangqing asked after seeing Shuang was long gone. Brother Yi, don't tell me you're in love with Shuang? Zhuo Yangqing asked after seeing Shuang was long gone. Emo frowned but didn't talk. He was thinking who Nie Shuang was, and what was her purpose in Hua Uni? If her sister wasn't there, it wouldn't matter so much, but she was. It was very dangerous to have someone like that in Hua Uni. What? If you like her, then you do. It's not like I'm going to tell everyone. Perhaps I can even help you. Why aren't you answering me? Seriously, Zhuo Yangqing said bitterly. Emo sneered. If I really was to love one of you two, I would rather love you than to love that Nie Shuang. Really? Brother Yi, you really love me? This is fabulous. Although I don't love you too much, but I can tell my third uncle that you love me. You don't know how much my third uncle admires you. Once he knows you love me, I wonder how he's going to suck up to me. Zhuo Yangqing was suddenly happy and held Emo's hand, talking non-stop. Emo twisted his hand and grabbed Zhuo Yangqing's wrist instead, shooting his qi inside her body. There was indeed a frosty qi. It was obviously by Nie Shuang. That woman was bisexual. Zhuo Yangqing screamed after having her wrist grabbed by Emo. She could hold Emo's hand, but Emo couldn't hold hers. She wanted to escape from it and quickly said, Uncle Yi, don't tell me you're serious. Even if you like me, it can't be that fast. I never said I liked you. Hurry up and let me go. Shut up. You really think high of yourself, Emo reproached. He felt speechless. He used his spirit qi to dispel the frigid qi before releasing her hand. Zhuo Yangqing was still struggling before and was immediately scared to a halt by Emo's yell. She just realized she was quite afraid of Emo. She finally felt relieved after Emo let go of her hand and didn't do anything. But she immediately said surprisingly, how come I feel a lot more comfortable? Brother Yi, grab me more. Then, Zhuo Yangqing reached her out wrist. Emo rolled his eyes and said, take back your cat claws, I'm not interested. Stop thinking that you're too perfect. You. Zhuo Yangqing felt wronged. He wanted it before, but now, he didn't want it when she gave it to her. However, it was indeed true she was a lot more comfortable after being grabbed by him. Emo looked at Tingting in his arms. She had fallen asleep on his shoulder. He then turned to Zhuo Yangqing and said, go back, I have some business at the bar. But one thing I need to remind you. You can take it as a warning. What thing? Uncle Yi, just say it. Zhuo Yangqing immediately said. Don't change the way you call me around. It annoys me. But that isn't the main thing. The main thing is, don't get close with Nie Shuang. It's bad for you. Whether or not you listen is up to you. Then, Emo turned and left. Zhuo Yangqing was dazed for a long time before frowning. Why did he remind her not to get close with Nie Shuang? Shuang was not an arrogant person. In fact, she was the prettiest girl in the uni and was also empathetic. She couldn't understand why. She wanted to stop Emo and ask, but she didn't need to. Emo was already stopped. Two cops had stopped Emo's way. Zhuo Yangqing looked at Qing Sun, who was not far and knew it was his fault. Take out your identity. You were fighting in the streets. We need you to come with us to the police department. The taller police stopped Emo and said. Of course, Emo also saw Qing Sun. He sneered and knew they were in the same group, or perhaps even Ching Sun's lackey. If it was when he was studying at Ning Hai, he would have no choice but to go with them. But now, he just sneered. Piss off. Just when Zhui Yangqing wanted to help Yimo say something, she heard Yimo tell the police to piss off. She was worried. Why didn't this guy know to change? He didn't know how to stay calm at all. Even if I can get you out later, there's no avoiding going in the retention center. Zhui Yangqing sighed and took out her phone, preparing to call her third uncle. As soon as Yimo said piss off, the faces of the two policemen changed. The shorter one pointed and Ting and Zhui Yangqing and said, "We suspect you in child trafficking. Now, we're taking you to the police department for investigation. If you have any questions, you can appeal later." Zhui Yangqing heard the words of the two police and immediately charged up, yelling, "You're bullsh asterisk Ting. Where do you see I'm underage? I'm telling you now, I'm trafficking young pretty boys. Apprehend me too." Then, Zhui Yangqing raised her not small chests and shafted Yimo's arms, obviously meaning, "What are you going to do?" Forgetting completely, she just thought to tell Yimo to stay calm. Ching Sun from afar was furious. Not only was he hit, but he also saw the person he liked shaft Yimo's arm. Yimo wasn't surprised Zhui Yangqing did that. It wasn't the first time she did. The two cops were shocked by Zhui Yangqing's words, but the taller police reacted and immediately said, "It could be sex trade. Take them both back." Zhui Yangqing's face changed and was taking out her phone to call. However, Yimo raised his arm and stopped her. He just took out a small blue book and opened it in front of the taller police and said, "I'll count to 3. If you don't piss off, then prepare to eat prison food." The two policemen immediately saw the red stamp, Special Ops Force Flying Snowhead Instructor, China Special Forces Bureau. They were so scared that they sweated immediately. Perhaps they didn't dare to start trouble with the sweeping lady of the Special Forces, much less the head instructor of flying snow. Other people didn't know how strong this position was, but the cops knew all too well. And that stamp had an obvious weak glow to it, meaning it's authentic. This couldn't be faked now. Before Yimo even counted one, the two policemen already quickly said multiple apologies and ran. They didn't even dare to go to Ching Sun. "Brother Yi, what did you show them? Why is it so effective? Can you get me one too?" Zhui Yangqing knew she was being dumb as soon as she finished asking. That was obviously an identity document. What document could make the cops scared? Must be powerful military ones. Yimo's mouth spasmed and said, "You can ask your third uncle." Zhui Yangqing knew that Yimo was playing a joke on her and unhappily said, "Why did you tell me to stay away from Nye Shuangshuang just then?" Yimo sneered. Even if Nye Shuangshuang wanted to drink, was there not one nearby the school? Why did she have to come to this one? Since she did, why did Ching Sun know? Why did he also appear here? This is too coincidental, isn't it? You're saying. Zhui Yangqing immediately understood. Nye Shuangshuang listened to Ching Sun to trick her over. Was she actually just putting on an act? I'll ask Ching Sun. When Zhui Yangqing turned around, Ching Sun was nowhere to be seen. I didn't think she was this sort of person. I've judged her wrong. This Ching Sun isn't a good thing either, Zhui Yangqing said hatefully. Yimo didn't tell her the eeriness about Nye Shuangshuang. That was no good for her. However, he still had to remind her and said, "Don't come in contact with her. It's no good for you." "So what if I come in contact with her? I want revenge. Plus, aren't you planning on getting close to her? Otherwise, why did you take her name card? This little fox demon." It was obvious Zhui Yangqing wouldn't be able to let it go without getting back at Nye Shuangshuang. Moreover, this Nye Shuangshuang also became a fox demon. She forgot that not long ago, she said Nye Shuangshuang was pitiful in front of Yimo. Yimo sneered and said, "Do you feel she's usually very timid and innocent? Would an innocent, shy person always have these name cards with flirty smells?" Then, Yimo took out that pink name card before continuing, "It's up to you whether you believe it. You can also think of it as me bullsh asterisk Ting." Zhui Yangqing wasn't a stupid girl. Although she couldn't completely analyze things sometimes, it didn't mean she knew nothing. From the series of things that happened today, and then reflecting back to what usually happens, Zhui Yangqing immediately understood that what Yimo said might possibly be true. She suddenly thought of Yimo grabbing her wrist and releasing it, then the change in her body. Was this related to Nye Shuangshuang? Just when Zhui Yangqing wanted to Yimo about it, Yimo's face suddenly changed as he rushed into the bar. Yimo saw that Yunbing suddenly rushed towards the man she followed like crazy and was about to throw a bottle on him. But immediately, she was suppressed by the two people beside her and was dragged inside the bar. Yimo saw that Yunbing suddenly rushed towards the man she followed like crazy and was about to throw a bottle on him. But immediately, she was suppressed by the two people beside her and was dragged inside the bar. Yimo went in and kicked those two men away without hesitation and pulled Yunbing over. Yunbing with messy hair saw that the person pulling her was Yimo and couldn't help to run into his arms and weep. Zhui Yangqing came in and saw Yunbing and then looked at Yimo. She felt this was complicated and just stood behind Yimo saying nothing. Feng Rong stood up and looked coldly at Yimo. There was a youth beside him who sat still and didn't even look at Yimo, as though Yimo was someone about to die. The two men struggled a long time before getting up and was about to attack again when the youth sitting still waved his hand. We're civilized people. Better to let the police deal with these maggots. Tell the police to not let this bastard come out again. Without the youth's reminder, the people from the bar had called the police. They could tell that although Yimo was by himself, he still had the advantage. The four people together on Feng Rong's side was no match for him. Yunbing had calmed down now and got up from Yimo's arms while sobbing. Zhui Yangqing passed some tissue to Yunbing. What's the matter? Yimo asked casually. Yunbing pointed at Feng Rong and hatefully said, "This animal, years ago, plotted against me and now, he want to help someone harm me for the second time?" Yimo frowned. Although Yunbing didn't say exactly what he did, he still understood that this Feng Rong was her original boyfriend. Not only did he not protect her, but he sold her instead. Yimo looked at Yunbing unhappily, thinking that it was lucky that the second time didn't succeed. If it did, it was still her fault. As though seeing Yimo's unhappy eyes, Yunbing lowered her head thinking even if she didn't hear this today, she wouldn't be harmed by him a second time. She wasn't an idiot. She was fully disappointed with Feng Rong, much less when she couldn't stop thinking about Yimo now. What thing could make him unable to be reached for 8 years in America? Why did he happen to leave as soon as it happened to her? The police car sounded, and the two nearby policemen had came. From the speed they came, it could be seen that the reporter's status wasn't low. Take this person away. He committed a heavy crime. I will call and provide evidence later. The way that the youth ordered made people feel as though the two police were his servants. The two policemen raised their head and saw Yimo. They froze, thinking not good. The person they feared seeing the most was this person. Why did these people have to mess with him? Why aren't you moving? The youth saw the two policemen just stood still and said unhappily. Yunbing handed Tingting to Yunbing and walked up in front of the youth. He grabbed his neck and held him up and gave him a few slaps on the face before kicking him besides the two men earlier. The youth's mouth was full of blood, and he spat out a few teeth. He was paralyzed on the ground, wanting to talk, but unable to. You. Feng Rong looked at Yimo in terror. He didn't expect Yimo to be this ferocious, daring to attack him like that in front of police. What made him unable to understand was why did the police come and just watch him get hit but not do anything? However, Yimo didn't teach Feng Rong a lesson and just patted on his shoulder a few times. Remember to not go anywhere tomorrow. Better to eat more today. Piss off. Feng Rong didn't know that he was death sentenced by Yimo since his heart meridian had been sealed by ladder. He thought Yimo let him go due to Yunbing. Thinking about the man on the ground, he yelled cockily, "You dare to attack Yilian?" Hearing Feng Rong's words, Yimo was surprised. He looked at the youth on the ground and asked, "You're from the Yi family?" "That's right. You scared?" Feng Rong sneered immediately, but before he finished, he found his face was spitting out the same amount of blood and teeth as Yiling. He now understood that if Yimo wanted to beat him up, he would. Yimo originally wanted him to have a calmer life before death, but this Feng Rong pissed him off. Yilian saw Yimo walk over and wiped the blood from his face using an unclear tone. "Bastard, you dare to attack me." However, Yimo stood on his face once again and said, "I want to hit the Yi family people. You tell me if I dare to hit you? Last time, I went up and smashed the Yi family big gate. I didn't see you." You are probably only a small insect of the Yi family. Yi Lian looked at Yi Mo in terror. He finally understood that this youth was that ancestor of the Yi family, Yi Mo. He didn't dare to be cocky anymore. Even the leader Yi Beirong didn't dare to say anything when Yi Mo smashed his way in, much less him from a branch lineage. He could only shake and hate himself for not recognizing this was Yi Mo. When he saw Yi Mo raise his foot again after breaking the legs of his two lackeys, he was so scared he quickly said, "Brother Yi, this isn't my fault. Feng Rong, that animal, said Yun Bing was by herself and told me to make a move. I listened him, and that's why I planned to." Arg. Before Yi Lian finished, Yi Mo still stepped down. Yi Mo turned to the two policemen and said, "Did you hear their verdict?" "Yes, we heard it." The two policemen bowed. "Oh, in that case, take these scums away. You don't need to notify me. Contributing to social stability is what I should be doing," Yi Mo blandly said. Hearing these words, Zhuo Yangqing couldn't help bursting into laughter. Yi Mo acted as though he didn't hear it as he turned to the two policemen and said, "I suspect this bar is problematic. Notify your leader. They must investigate this. Hand the result to Flying Eagle Li Hu and tell him to notify me. If you can't find anything, then don't blame me then. Same if you use a few small fries as scapegoats." Yi Mo wouldn't believe this bar wasn't problematic when Ye Shuang chose to drink here. "Sorry, I caused trouble for you again," Yun Bing said apologetically. Yi Mo waved his hand and said, "It's not a problem if I'm here. If I'm not, then that would be a problem, so?" Although Yi Mo didn't finish his words, Yun Bing understood what he meant. She should not be so impulsive in the future. Feng Rong destroyed her life, and that made her unable to control herself. However, this was just once. There wouldn't be anything that would make her so emotional again. To her, her past was dead, and there was no point in remembering it. "Let's go eat." Yi Mo saw Yun Bing was unhappy and said casually. Although Zhuo Yangqing didn't know what was going on, she could understand part of the situation and quickly said, "Brother Yi, you and this sister can come to my house to eat and—" It seems she didn't forget about checking up on her grandpa. Yi Mo agreed. Seeing this, Zhuo Yangqing quickly called her third uncle and her small aunt. Immediately, everyone in the Zhuo family started moving. The Zhuo family had been so hopeful of Yi Mo's coming. Zhuo Yushan's coral poison was too easy for Yi Mo now. In less than half an hour it was all gone. The Zhuo family was very polite to Yun Bing due to Yi Mo, even more than Yi Mo. From Zhuo Yushan's perspective, Yi Mo was an excellent stock. If Yun Bing was his woman, it would be more effective to treat her nice. Just when Yi Mo was prepared to leave, the news reported the matter between O Tanya and O Chen. Yi Mo nodded, thinking this elder Han was really fast. It had only been a day, and they were done. These old people probably had the intention already and used him as the leading bird. But despite knowing he was used by them, he would still kill O Tanhu. The O family is done. Zhuo Yushan looked at the TV and sighed. He continued, "The O family was too cocky. They've harmed a lot of people in recent years, much less what happened 20 years ago." Yun Bing looked at Yi Mo in shock. She didn't expect Yi Mo meant this when he said the O family wouldn't look for trouble with her. Just how much power did he have? Yi Mo smiled to Yun Bing and nodded. Yun Bing immediately felt warm at heart. Even if he wasn't her man, it was still her luck to be able to know someone as magical as him. Thinking that she wouldn't have to live a life of terror, she suddenly felt optimistic. Wuliang Mountain was called Minglu Mountain before. It had an area of a few thousand acres. Wuliang Mountain was called Minglu Mountain before. It had an area of a few thousand acres. The Qing dynasty poet Da Jiajing wrote a poem here. Everyone knew that Dai Jiajing was a famous poet during the times of Daoguang Emperor. People rarely knew that he also had a brother Dai Jiahui. Around 1816, they met someone from Dian Song of the hidden sects here and were taken in due to their talent. Dai Jiajing wanted to be a scholar and rejected to stay, but Dai Jiahui stayed. They were scared that if they left at the same time, the hidden sect people would kill their family. After Dai Jiajing came out, he participated in the national test. He was 24 that year and was sent to Hunan province as the governor, but still had no news of Dai Jiahui. He missed his brother, and so he came to Wuliang Mountain and wrote the poem. His poem meant that inside the Wuliang Mountain, The area was actually very large and high up in the clouds. Its vastness was so great that one couldn't see it with bare eyes. Now, Wuliang Mountain was a national environmental protection site. It hid countless unknown scenery as well as countless unknown places. At this moment, at a place where normal people couldn't reach in the Wuliang Mountains, there was a large area of houses. The place looked ancient. Outside these houses, there was a curved path reaching to the bottom of the mountain. Looking from the bottom, these houses were like an immortal realm hidden in the clouds. In front of the houses was a big tower with the enormous character of Serenity. This was the hidden sect Serenity. There was a distant room, and in it, Luo Susu sat there dazed while thinking about something. She had returned to the hidden sects for a month of 2. Originally, she thought it would only take a few days to forget that man, but it had been 2 months now, and she still couldn't calm down to cultivate her serene heart manual. Once she closed her eyes, Yemo would appear in front of her. Those scenes that she couldn't hide away showed up again and again. He almost died due to thirst, but still gave the water bag to her. He knew it was the desert and how important water was for people. What sort of magical man was he? Even though he was almost eaten by those insects, he still didn't want to leave her behind. Instead, he carried her and continued running. What sort of an emotional man was he? He searched around for water everywhere to save her while his lips were cracked dry. Then, he cut open his own wrist to feed her blood until he went unconscious. However, that was the first time she met him, and as for her, she just gave him some water at most. And the pool he gave her, that was the best birthday present she got in her entire life. This present was given to her in the desert. Who could give such a present in the desert? What sort of a person was he? Luo Susu thought about Yemo's lips, that moment when she kissed him. His lips were very cold but warm at the same time. Now that she thought about, she felt lost in the thought. I will forget about him. I must. Luo Susu cultivated her serene heart manual, but before she could even complete a circle, she spat out another mouthful of blood. This was already the 6th time it happened. Susu, our sex cultivation forbids joy, worry, anger, emotions, hurt. The words of her master echoed in her ears, but she still went against it all. If her master was still here, she could ask her, but she wasn't. She didn't know if he was doing well. Did he finish his things? Luo Susu's thoughts went to Yemo again. What was happening to her? Why did she always think about him? It seemed that in her memory, she and Yemo knew each other a long time ago. However, no matter how she searched her memory, there were only those in the desert. Perhaps she knew him from her past life. Luo Susu's door suddenly opened and a nun-looking woman walked in. This nun was called Jing Shi, her master Shirdi. Although she was in her 40s, she looked like a young woman who hasn't even reached her 30s. Not only was her skin smooth, her eyes and brows were clearly defined. Her lips had this sexy rudiness to it. Looking meticulously, she was an oddly beautiful woman. The most noticeable feature about her was her sharp nose. If her eyes and hair wasn't black, she would look Western. Shirshu, Dwan. Luo Susu stood up and called. The nun looked at Luo Susu and frowned. Susu, you are no longer suited to cultivating at Serenity. You just went to the mortal world once, and you were enticed by it, losing your Tao heart. But you are from the hidden sect, and you must not be led into the mortal world again. Shirshu, Luo Susu said worriedly. She knew this Shirshu didn't like her. She didn't know why, but it should be related to her master. There must be some punishment the way her Shirshu was talking. The nun shook her head and said, Susu, even if you can't cultivate our way, you don't have to go back to the normal world. Before Luo Susu could feel relieved, the nun continued, the young master of Diansong is only 30 years of age, but he is tertiary stage of yellow level. His future is boundless. Plus, Diansong's martial arts are good for you. Our sects have always had good relations, and we're not far from each other. If you marry into Diansong, no. Luo Susu's face went pale. No matter what, she wouldn't marry someone. As for why, she had this rejection in her heart. This nun's face sunk and was about to talk once again when another voice said, Jingshi Shermei, if Susu doesn't want it, then don't force her. Although we have fallen, We're not at the stage to rely on marriage to survive. Yes, sure, Jia. However, Jingxi obviously didn't seem very respectful to her. Luo Susu went up and greeted. Luo Susu greets sect leader. MHM. The nun nodded and said after a while, Susu, you do have a big problem after coming back. Your heart can no longer calm down like before. Then, the nun started to think what to do with Luo Susu. Leader Sherbo, I wish to ask for one more thing. Because I went out this time and some things occurred, if I can't completely resolve these things, it may be very hard for me to calm my heart to cultivate again. So I plead leader to allow me to go out again. Luo Susu had this sudden urge to see Yimo again. She wanted to ask if Yimo had seen her before and had some memory of her before. No. Jingxi interrupted. Jingxian Shijia. Susu yearns for the mortal world. If we let her back in, perhaps something would happen, and it would be our sect that is embarrassed. Luo Susu was shaking with anger due to these words, but didn't dare to object. However, Jingxian nodded and said, Then what do you think should happen? Jingxi didn't even look at Luo Susu and just said, In my opinion, it was already against the rules that Luo Susu went out last time. After she came back, she couldn't cultivate. I think we should send her to the cold room for 3 years. Luo Susu was shaken. Cold room for 3 years. That was like a death sentence. With her only yellow-level intermediate stage power, it was death if she went in there. Her master died 3 months after being closed in the cold room for 2 years. Her master was also sent to that cold room due to this sure shoe. Now, she didn't expect she would be walking the same path due to her. Jingxian glanced at Jingxi and sighed. Susu, you might as well go to Diansong. Luo Susu shook her head and said, Leader Sherbo, I will go to the cold room. Unworthy thing. Jingxi didn't even say goodbye to Jingxian and just left. Sigh. Jingxian looked at Luo Susu and left. Although she knew that Jingxi wanted to take revenge on Luo Susu's master, but she couldn't say anything. Leader Sherbo, I want to change my name. Luo Susu suddenly called to the leaving Jingxian. Jingxian turned around and looked at Luo Susu with guilt. Susu, tell me, I will change it for you in the sect. I can do that at least. She also knew that if Luo Susu went to the cold room, there would be no coming back. However, she didn't dare to stop Jingxi's decision. She just felt guilty to Luo Susu's master and her. Luo Susu wasn't dumb. Jingxian was the leader, but was succumbed to Jingxi. If there wasn't something that Jingxi had a grasp of, she definitely wouldn't believe it. Sherbo, I want to change my name to Luoing. I found that I often call myself Luoing in my dreams, Luo Susu said. She was worried for her Sherbo. Jingxian looked once at Luo Susu and nodded. She took out a jade necklace from her sleeves and gave it to Luo Susu and said, Susu, from now on, you are Luoing. This necklace was sent over by a friend from the Luotsong Magical Artifact Social. This is a real magical artifact, it's yours now. Good luck. I'm going. A 1. TL note. Sure Shu. Referring to anyone in the same sect who is in the same generation as your master but younger than him. Sure Bo, same as Sure Shu, but referring to older than your master. At night, after Yimo sent Yunbing and Tingting back, he went straight to Han Zixin. However, Yunbing twisted and turned unable to fall asleep. She knew that as soon as the day was bright, she and Tingting would go back to Ninghai. She would no longer have the chance to be with Yimo anymore. Perhaps tonight was the last night she would stay together with Yimo. At night, after Yimo sent Yunbing and Tingting back, he went straight to Han Zixin. However, Yunbing twisted and turned unable to fall asleep. She knew that as soon as the day was bright, she and Tingting would go back to Ninghai. She would no longer have the chance to be with Yimo anymore. Perhaps tonight was the last night she would stay together with Yimo. The more she thought, the more she regretted running away from Yimo's room. However, she felt too hard to summon the courage to go again. She knew if she didn't take the initiative, Yimo wouldn't come for her. Sometimes, she felt she was a bad woman, but she knew that in the depth of her heart, what she was thinking wasn't completely to repay Yimo. It was because she really wanted to be together with Yimo, even if it was just for one night. She was afraid Yimo would think she was trying to use him, But she knew that she really didn't think that way. Yun Bing had made up her mind. After Yimo comes back to sleep, she would go to his room again. Although it was a bit shameless, she would still do it for Yimo. At around 10 p.m., Yimo still hadn't come back, but Yun Bing was almost about to fall asleep. Finally, the door sounded. The sleepy Yun Bing immediately sat up in nervousness, but she heard the knocking sound from her own room. Her heart was raised. Was Yimo coming over to her? How could this be? Ting Ting was still sleeping. Thinking about this, Yun Bing wanted to get off the bed and look, but at this moment, the lights were turned on. Yun Bing was dumbfounded. The person who came in wasn't Yimo but a girl. She still had a bag in her hands, so she realized it was probably Yiling. Yiling knew Yimo was at Beijing and no longer had the mood to play in America. She came back by herself first, but didn't expect to see Yun Bing when she opened her room and froze. "You are Yiling?" Yun Bing said. Yiling nodded and asked, "You are?" "I'm Yun Bing, Yimo's English teacher." Yun Bing quickly explained but felt relieved and disappointed at the same time. She didn't have the courage to go to Yimo's room anymore. Now that Yiling was back, she couldn't even if she wanted to. "You are Mrs. Yun Bing. I've heard my brother talk about you," Yiling said in surprise. Yimo said Yun Bing saved his life before, but now it seemed there was some relationship between them. She immediately saw Ting Ting and was shocked. Yimo didn't tell her Yun Bing had a child, and she was so old already. In that case, she was obviously not suitable with her brother. Seeing Yiling look at Ting Ting, Yun Bing quickly explained what happened from Hong Kong till now. "My brother went out?" Yiling thought Yimo was asleep. As though knowing Yimo would come at night, Han Zixin had prepared tea and snacks. But even so, when Yimo actually came, Han Zixin felt relieved. He didn't have any way if Yimo didn't come because his phone was always off. Yimo saw that other than Elder Han and Han Yin, there was also another man in his 50s. Han Zixin was very polite to Yimo seeing him come in. He quickly stood up. "Yimo, this is the military laboratories Li Xiang. Old Li, this is Yimo I told you about." Han Zixin just introduced the two, but didn't say Li Xiang's position. Li Xiang also nodded to Yimo. In his eyes, although Yimo was strong, he was still young. For someone in high status like them, they only needed to be nice, and Yimo would be extremely grateful. And it seemed pretty easy to use Yimo this time. Thus, he didn't understand why Han Zixin took Yimo so seriously. In his impression, Yimo was a simple-minded but strong youth. Yimo didn't care seeing that Li Xiang seemed to be a little rude. He couldn't even be bothered to nod. To him, there was no point in getting close with such a person. Their pursuits were different. It was just a deal between him and Han Zixin. Seeing that Yimo couldn't even be bothered to nod, Li Xiang couldn't keep it together. However, he was in a high status for a long time and had some control. Han Zixin frowned thinking this old Li was good but just underestimated people. Seeing that Han Zixin wanted to ease up the tension, he waved his hand and sat down. "Elder Han, don't waste time. Since this is a deal, just tell me what to do. I prefer to be straightforward." Han Zixin had some understanding of Yimo's personality and nodded. "In that case, I'll be straightforward. We researched the model you gave Li Hu carefully last time. It's an extremely valuable military secret. We originally thought it was just worth tens of millions, but by the looks of it now, that's only a minor fraction of it." Yimo immediately knew the mission was related to this, but he already gave the thing to Han Zixin. Why did they bring it up? Han Zixin continued. "The conclusion we got is that this model is only a part of it. It's only the outer energy core part. The nucleus of the thing isn't there. Now that we know how important this data is, we can't have such precious thing in the hands of others. Although we don't know who invented this data, but it could be said to be a military milestone." Then, Han Zixin looked at Yimo. "I think you should know. We want you to get back the remaining part. Regardless if our country can really create it, it's much better to have this in our hands than in others." "You want me to find you this?" Yimo frowned. When Dong gave this to him, where would he find it? Han Zixin nodded seriously. "Indeed, I think only you can find this. One reason is that you gave it to us, so you should know something about where it came from. The second is that normal people's power wouldn't be able to retrieve such a precious data. So I want you to go with Han Yin and find the remaining data." Li Xiang added timely, it's every citizen's responsibility to serve the country. So this is not only a mission but an honor. Yimo looked coldly at Li Xiang. Shut up, stop playing your games. Li Xiang's face immediately changed. He didn't understand Yimo, so he took out those big ideas he used to educate young people with. Of course, Han Zixin knew Yimo's personality. Even if Yimo knew his position, he would still be nothing in the eyes of Yimo. Yimo was someone who wouldn't get up early without benefit. It was useless to educate him with those big ideals. If he owed the country, then he would repay the debt himself. Yimo hated empty words. He quickly stopped Li Xiang, who was going to throw a tantrum. Oldly, Yimo is like that. Don't be like that. Han Yin sat by the side saying nothing. It was completely irrelevant to her, but she looked coldly at Li Xiang. It seemed she also despised him. Han Zixin's payment of 1 block of green silver sand should be enough. In Yimo's heart, that was worth countless times more than that military model. However, only he knew the worth of the green silver sand. As such, Yimo knew Han Zixin's reward was enough, but Han Zixin didn't. Seeing Yimo not talk, Han Zixin was afraid Yimo would regret and quickly said, the next batch of material is coming in 3 months, then I'll let you pick 10 more. Yimo waved his hand and said, I agree to this. I'll try. Regardless of whether I succeed or not, I won't return the green silver sand. Yimo was not interested at all in picking 10 more. If he could pick out 5 or 6 things, he would already be happy. There wouldn't be that much good materials for him to pick anyway. Okay, you and Yin Er can start tomorrow. Han Zixin stood up in joy. Then he turned to Han Yin and said, Yin Er, no matter what, safety first, okay? However, Yimo said, no need. I'll go by myself. It's cumbersome to have an extra person. Yimo, I admit you're strong. But if you think you can beat me for sure, you're wrong. Otherwise, let's fight first. Han Yin was discomforted by Yimo's words. No need to fight. I'll let you come with me. Looking at the way Han Yin jumped into fighting stance, he knew he underestimated her body technique at least. No need to fight. I'll let you come with me. Looking at the way Han Yin jumped into fighting stance, he knew he underestimated her body technique at least. No matter how strong she was, she wouldn't be cumbersome with that movement technique and might even give him some help. Of course, another plan was that since she was from the hidden sects, perhaps he could try to get something out of her mouth. That was the most important. Han Yin intentionally showed some ability and saw that Yimo indeed seemed to be impressed as he allowed her to go. She raised her head high in self-satisfaction. Ever since Yimo killed O Tanhu, she felt she was no match for him. But even though she felt she was no match for him, she felt she lost to no one in movement technique. Even Yimo, buy the ticket to Xian Mountain and wait for me at the airport tomorrow morning. Yimo dropped these words and left quickly. He needed to find Wendong before he could find the thing. Only Wendong knew where it came from. Plus, he wanted to go to Flowing Snake. He needed to buy some things that could prevent Nye Shuangshuang to not attack his relatives. He's a conceited person, Han Yin suddenly said. I think he's an arrogant freak, not respecting his elders. Li Xiang sneered. Han Zixin waved his hand and said, Oldly, you need to change your temper. Do you know why the Song family didn't dare to touch him? Your Li family is also a big family of Beijing, so you would know after you ask Marshal Li. Sometimes, you can't just be doing academics. Li Xiang looked at Han Zixin in shock. He thought Han Zixin would be on his side, but Han Zixin was helping Yimo. Marshal Li was his big brother, and also the most authoritative person in the Li family. He didn't expect Han Zixin to tell him to ask his big brother. Did his big brother look at Yimo differently? Why would someone so young and abandoned by the Yi family be worth noting? Yimo bought a lot of daily products. Although he was stage 3 Qi gathering, he was still fearful of his experience in the desert. He didn't believe he was completely safe just because he was stage 3. There might be earth level or even sky level masters. Even if he was surrounded by those bugs in the desert, he would die. After he bought enough things, he called Nye Shuangshuang. Nye Shuangshuang's shy voice sounded. It was very sweet and made people feel comfortable and even render this impulsive feeling. When Yimo came to Hua University, Nye Shuangshuang stood at the door looking very nervous. She wore a plain green dress, and her hair was wet. A few strands came down her soft-skinned face, making her seem more nimble and innocent. Accompanied with her high soaring chest, almost all the students at the door would secretly look at her. Just when Emo walked in front of her, he smelt this faint aroma. It seemed to be natural coming from the body. Seeing Emo come over, Nye Shuangshuang rubbed her sleeves nervously and seemed to say something, but Emo knew she said nothing. Seeing Emo just stand in front of her and not say anything for a long time, Nye Shuangshuang raised her head and used those innocent-looking eyes and said, "Brother Yi, you wanted me?" Then, she lowered her head and held onto the edge of her skirt tightly. Emo sighed. This woman could go get a golden Oscars at Hollywood. He thought she would be perfect to lure those black bulky men. So why stay at a place like Hua University? Moreover, she seemed to know how to utilize men's weakness. Even though Emo knew there was something wrong with her, he still couldn't prevent himself from having strange thoughts towards her. As though not hearing Emo's reply, she secretly looked at Emo while blushing and looked down. Emo said, "Indeed, I wanted to look for you. Do you have time?" Tomorrow's the weekend." Nye Shuangshuang just said half a sentence. Emo sneered. She was acting innocent too much. Tomorrow is the weekend, so that meant she could go out with him for the entire night. What sort of girl would say that to someone she only met for the second time? She didn't say the second half of the sentence, but any man could imagine it. It seemed to be more enticing left unsaid. "Let's go. You wanted to drink with Shui Yangqing yesterday but wasn't able to. How about I take you out for a drink?" Emo said straightforwardly. He felt that frosty feeling on Nye Shuangshuang was weaker today. He didn't want to know who Nye Shuangshuang was, but Yiling still had to stay a month or two at Hua University. He didn't want her to be in danger, so he had to know who Nye Shuangshuang was and what that bleak feeling from her was. If she was a threat to Yiling, he didn't mind doing something good for society. Nye Shuangshuang looked at Emo in shock due to his straightforwardness but didn't reject. She hesitantly agreed as though it was hard for her to reject. Drunk Eye Bar is close to the uni, but they didn't sit at the bar and chose a distant corner and sat. "What do you want to drink?" Emo asked casually. If possible, he didn't want to get on bad terms with her. Although he wasn't afraid of her, he didn't want enemies everywhere. So what if Nye Shuangshuang was messing around with other people every day? The reason he asked her out today was to tell her to back off from his sister. Nye Shuangshuang didn't say what she wanted to drink, but instead asked, "Brother Yi, did you ask me out to drink? I feel as though you don't like me very much, but why did you ask me out?" Under the dim light, she seemed more bold and could at least look at Emo when she talked. "Since you can tell I don't like you very much, why did you come out with me?" Emo asked with derision. She didn't seem to notice it and said feebly, "Because the first time I saw you, I feel this intimacy from you so you like me?" Then, Emo told the waiter to serve to beer. He wasn't here to drink today. Nye Shuangshuang suddenly raised her head and said, "Yes, Brother Yi. Although it's not to the degree of liking you, but I have a great impression of you. It's the first time I had this feeling coming here. So today, when you said you wanted to drink, I came with you without hesitation. But why are you talking to me with this tone? I don't even know what your name is." Emo sneered. "Good impression. If you're still a virgin, perhaps I would have some good impression to you. Now, don't talk about good impression in front of me." Originally, Emo wanted to have a talk with her, but seeing how she kept this act up, he suddenly felt very annoyed. "You." Nye Shuangshuang suddenly stood up. Her pretty face was shaking under the light. She pointed her hand at Emo and wanted to say something, but she put it back down. After a while, she continued, "You called me out just to say this to me? Do you have no manners around girls? I saw you wrong." Then, Nye Shuangshuang turned to leave as though she was really angered by Emo's words. However, Emo sat without moving. He knew that if this woman wanted Min's yang essence, she wouldn't let him go because he cultivated pure yang qi. This was probably the good impression in her eyes. However, Emo saw Nye Shuangshuang walk to the door and still had no intentions of turning back. He frowned but didn't believe he saw her wrong. He still felt the sense of the opposite sex from her yesterday. Plus, this woman had this eerie cold feeling. Emo knew she wasn't a normal person. "Such a hot chick. Come in and have a drink with me." Two men who just walked into the bar saw Nye Shuang. One of their eyes brightened up immediately, and he grabbed towards her. Nye Shuang screamed, but couldn't break free. Let's go to a private room. It's much better than outside. Then, the grabbed Nye Shuang walked inside. Many people saw it, and even the bar people, but no one said a thing. They continued to do what they were doing. Nye Shuang looked helplessly towards Emo. It was obvious she wanted Emo to help her. She saw how strong Emo was yesterday. If he did something, even if he couldn't beat these two, she could break free. Emo, however, was still sipping the beer that was just brought to him as though he didn't see it at all. However, Emo's spirit sense scanned that the eyes Nye Shuang showed had disappointment, deep disappointment, rather than loss and hope. Soon, Nye Shuang was dragged into a private room by those two scum. The door was then slammed shut. You're also coming to have fun at the bar. What are you scared of? I'll make you very comfortable later. There's plenty of money, don't worry. I'm not someone who just leaves after eating. The man released Nye Shuang's hands after closing the door. You're also coming to have fun at the bar. What are you scared of? I'll make you very comfortable later. There's plenty of money, don't worry. I'm not someone who just leaves after eating. The man released Nye Shuang's hands after closing the door. Where did you see me being scared? Nye Shuang's face was suddenly very bleak. The two men froze when they saw Nye Shuang at the door. Her face seemed so helpless. With her innocent look, they felt they needed to comfort her first after pulling her in, however. This girl changed her face too quick. The helplessness and innocence turned to bleakness now. The two men felt a frosty feeling from their bones. If this wasn't at a bar and the room lights were still on, they would have thought they met a fox demon deep in the mountains. Who are you? The other man yelled. The girl still had the same face, but it caused them to feel cold and scared. Nye Shuang sneered. Who am I? Didn't you drag me in? Now that you dragged me in, why aren't you doing anything but asking who I am? Nye Shuang's cold tone made the two men shiver. Suddenly, they lost all their lust. They had no lust for such a beautiful Nye Shuang. They just wanted to get out quick. They couldn't understand how a woman changed so much. We're joking. Let's go. Xiao Xiong, let's get out. The man who grabbed Nye Shuang suddenly said. He didn't want to face Nye Shuang. He felt his skin was tingling. Go out? Why go out? You pulled me in. Don't you want to do something? Nye Shuang suddenly said without any tone. Don't want to. The man called Xiao Xiong felt the frigidness in the room and wanted to pull the door open. They didn't want to face Nye Shuang. Nye Shuang sneered. Do you think you can still go? What are you saying? The man who held the handle of the door just asked that and felt this long needle pierce the top of his head. The other man just saw a silver light flashed and his pal was on the ground. He wanted to scream, but that silver light also pierced his head. You. The man could only say this word before also falling to the ground. Nye Shuang dumped these two on the couch. From her easy attitude, it seemed as though these people weren't 70 kilograms but a few kgs. Nye Shuang looked at the two she killed and was lost for a moment. However, her eyes became cold again. She suddenly pulled the zip on her skirt as though she was taking it off. Clap, clap, clap. Nye Shuang turned around and saw Emo clapping behind her. She didn't even know when Emo came in. Fascinating, fascinating. I saw these people fall asleep not long after they came in. I see you taking off your clothes too. Do you want to sleep a while too? Emo didn't sound displeased at all. Nye Shuang eyes seemed anxious as she quickly pulled the zip on her skirt back and stared at Emo a while before asking, When did you come in? Emo sneered. This isn't what you should ask. It has nothing to do with you. I just didn't want to see an ugly scene, so I came in earlier. Nye Shuang bit her lips until it almost bled. Her eyes seemed red, but she still didn't say anything. What you want to do has nothing to do with me, but I'm afraid after you're done, I will lose my appetite to talk with you. So, I want to say my words first. As for what you do after I leave, it has nothing to do with me, Emo said coldly. Nye Shuang raised her head and looked at Emo, saying word by word, Do you believe that I can kill you right now with a raise of my hand? Emo suddenly sat down and pulled out a beer bottle from his storage ring. opened it and drank a mouth before saying, "I don't believe it." Nye Shuang seemed to have forgotten what she just said and just stared at Emo. He wore very little, just a shirt and long pants. Where did he get this bottle from? If it was in his pocket, it would be bulging. I'm waiting for you to kill me. If you're gonna do it, then hurry up. My patience is limited. Emo just saw Nye Shuang kill with needles, but he didn't know where she hid the needles. If she attacked, he would take her needles and have a look. He wasn't so perverted to scan her entire body with his spirit sense. But I don't want to kill you. I really don't. Then, the bleak look on her face retreated. She paused for a moment before continuing. You knew I could deal with them, so you didn't help me, right? Emo shook his head. Even if I didn't know if you could deal with them, I wouldn't do anything. Who knows if you wanted it anyways, because you're this sort of person. Nye Shuang suddenly started to shake as her face grew pale again. Her hands even moved a few times, but eventually stopped. Speak, what do you want? Nye Shuang's tone was no longer sweet, but low and bleak. Emo said coldly, I know your origin isn't ordinary, and I don't know what you're doing at Hua University. However, there's one thing I need to persuade you. You can think of it as a warning. Yiling is my sister. You better not touch half a strand of her hair. Otherwise, no matter who you are, I won't let you go. Yiling is your sister? Nye Shuang studied Emo again and seemed to be shocked. Nye Shuang was just shocked for a short time and recovered quickly. She said, I've been at Hua Uni for a few years. Who did you see me touch? Regardless of whether or not you're Yiling's brother, I wouldn't touch her. Emo said plainly, not necessarily. You and Zhuo Yangqing are such good friends, but you could harm her much less other people. So, I don't really believe your words. When did I harm Zhuo Yangqing? You're wrong. Indeed, you saw me kill these people today, but don't think everything you see is reality. I don't want to explain to you. I can make an oath, but not because I'm scared of you, but because... Nye Shuang's eyes went red again. Emo looked coldly at her. If she didn't make a deadly oath, then she could expect not to walk out of this room today. I, Nye Shuang, swear that if I have any bad intentions towards Yiling, I would be struck by lightning and never have the chance to enter reincarnation. Nye Shuang spoke and even shed tears. Emo wouldn't care about her tears, but he was quite satisfied with her oath. No matter who Nye Shuang was, this oath was quite serious. It was believable when a cultivator made such oath. Seeing Nye Shuang make the oath, Emo stood up. He didn't care about what Nye Shuang did with the two dead people. However, Nye Shuang walked to the door first and turned and said, Whether you believe it or not, I can kill you easily, but I didn't. And, I want to tell you, I'm still a virgin. Then, Nye Shuang turned and left. After walking out a long way, Emo's voice sounded at her ear. Whether you believe it or not, the moment you attacked, you would have died. As for whether or not you're a virgin, it has nothing to do with me. Nye Shuang suddenly turned around. She found that she was outside of the bar, but Emo was nowhere to be seen. She was astonished. Was that sound just the illusion? Emo looked at the two dead men and walked out. He didn't deal with the body. It didn't concern him if he was investigated for it. When Emo came back, he found out that Yiling had returned and was talking with Yunbing. It seemed they had been chatting for a long time. Brother, you're finally back. Why did you come back at 2? Yiling was obviously unhappy he came back so late. Emo smiled and said, You came from so far. Aren't you going to sleep? I'm leaving Beijing tomorrow. You're going tomorrow? Are you going back to Luotsong? Yunbing was worried. No, I'm doing some business. Emo couldn't say what he was doing. Brother, can you turn your phone on? I can never reach your phone. Yiling still wanted to catch up with Emo, but he was leaving tomorrow. Emo didn't care about his phone and instead said to Yiling seriously, Yiling, don't get close to Nye Shuang from your school, do you understand? Why? Brother, she's the prettiest in the school and likes to keep a low profile. We rarely talk. Do you know her? Yiling asked in surprise. Emo felt relieved and said, I don't know her, but trust my words. After you graduate, if I'm still not done, you can go Luotsong. Brother, after Zifeng comes back, you should talk to him. In fact, I don't agree to him staying at the Yi family, but he said it was very hard for Grandpa too. He wanted to help Grandpa, and he said the main reason Grandpa got him back was due to you. Although Yi Ling didn't want to stay at Beijing, she was worried about Yi Zifeng staying here himself. Although her big and fourth uncle was sent away from Beijing, who knew if the other members of the Yi family would do something to Yi Zifeng? Yi Mo nodded. Yi Zifeng saw things more clearly than Yi Ling, but it was impossible for him to try to persuade Yi Zifeng. Everyone had their own life. Seeing Yi Mo look down and not talk, Yi Ling suddenly thought of one thing and quickly said, "Brother, Zifeng told me to give this to you. He said it was related to your mom." The old man suddenly went in the room and took out a letter to Yi Mo last time. Dong Dong asked someone to bring this to you if you came in 3 months. If you didn't come, she told me to burn it. Yi Mo took the letter in surprise, thinking if it wasn't due to Han Zixin's business, he definitely wouldn't come. Even if he came, how could Wen Dong know he could find this place and even leave this letter for him? Yi Mo opened the letter and was dazed once again. There was just one word, run. What did this mean? Han Yin also saw this and looked at Yi Mo with curiosity. The owner couple saw Yi Mo look at the letter in shock but walked into the backyard. This big run word was written from clear to unclear. The last bit seemed to disappear. Yi Mo frowned and suddenly understood. Wen Dong meant for him to run away as far as possible and even hide his name. Not good. Something happened to Wen Dong. That was Yi Mo's first thought. Something must have happened to Wen Dong due to that data, and those people were interrogating her where it went. Only Wen Dong knew she gave it to him. She didn't tell about him, but instead told him to leave. It could be seen that although they met each other occasionally, she was a very trustworthy person. Han Yin saw Yi Mo's face change and wanted to ask what was going on. Suddenly, Yi Mo's face was bleak as he looked at the door of the inn. "I knew you would come, as expected, haha." Wen Dong wouldn't say no matter what, but is that any use? A cocky voice sounded. Han Yin suddenly found Yi Mo had charged out. When Yi Mo came back, he carried a lady with him. This lady had shriveled hair and messy clothes. There was wounds all over her body and her face was pale. The moment he snatched Wen Dong from the car at the door of the inn, he knew she wasn't going to make it. Her heart was shattered and she didn't have a breath anymore. He could treat her heart with his qi, but her life force was dissipated. Yi Mo couldn't save her unless there was a spiritual herb that could recover her life force. Although Yi Mo had some pills on him, it was a far cry from a spirit herb that recovered life force. Yi Mo inserted his qi into Wen Dong, wanting to wake her up, but there was nothing after a while. Chapter 189. Between Life and Death. Chapter 189. Between life and death. As though scared by Yi Mo's ghostly figure, everyone took out their guns on the car. The leading person was a strangely beautiful young married woman. Wen Dong. Yi Mo suddenly felt guilty. Although Wen Dong's death was not due to him, she was tortured like this probably because she didn't want to reveal where the data was. Wen Dong slowly opened her eyes with the forceful treatment of Yi Mo's strong qi. When she saw Yi Mo, she was surprised and quickly said in a voice that even Yi Mo could barely hear, "Yi Mo, sorry, I involved you in this. North Sand is looking for the model. Quickly go." I didn't say. It was just these few words that used up all of her power and life force. Her head fell in Yi Mo's arms as she slowly closed her eyes. Yi Mo suddenly felt a fit of emptiness. Wen Dong didn't die due to him, but he couldn't bear this sadness. Funny how he still wanted to find Wen Dong to get the rest of the data, but didn't consider the complications for Wen Dong at all. Although Wen Dong was a woman, she was straightforward, generous, and very tenacious. Although she didn't tell Yi Mo what she did with the money, he knew that she definitely didn't use it herself. Yi Mo raised his head and looked coldly at the 4 men pointing guns at him before looking down at Wen Dong and saying, "Sister Dong, don't worry, just go. I swear that in my life, I will pull North Sand from its roots and burn that data in front of your grave." "Yi Mo, you..." Han Yin heard Yi Mo's words and was shocked. Regardless of whether he eradicated North Sand, the country needed that data. If Yi Mo casually burned it in front of someone's grave, what would her grandpa say? Yimo's eyes were slightly red as he glanced coldly at Han Yin. Shut up. Han Yin was about to rage being told off by Yimo for no reason, but she looked at the guns pointed at them and resisted the urge. Yimo turned, looked at the four men pointing guns at them, and coldly said, "You are the bastards of North Sand?" "Indeed, we are from North Sand. You are the person who took our data?" It was the young lady who talked. Her eyes were cold, but it gave off a mature young woman's sense. "You hit Sister Dong?" Yimo's tone was frosty. "That's right, I sent the order, but don't worry, perhaps you may enjoy that treatment very soon." The young woman's tone was colder than Yimo. "Then," she continued, "if you give it over, perhaps you may enjoy a very beautiful service instead. We North Sand is established on the ideal on an equal environment. If you still have some morality in you, hand it over." Yimo didn't even bother replying this time. He just waved his hand in mid-air a few times, and a few frosty winds swept over. The two men and that woman's wrists were sliced off. The eerie thing was that not much blood spilled out. But still, a man managed to do this, and the wind blade that sliced on the car instead created a metallic screeching sound. The Range Rover had a deep mark appearing on its door. Everyone was shocked at that moment. What was this? He sliced people's wrist off in midair? No one saw anything. Blood didn't even spill out. Han Yan's brain also froze. She tried to overestimate Yimo's capabilities, but now, she knew that Yimo was far powerful than she thought. She even forgot about Yimo yelling at her. With Yimo's power, if he fought with her and he suddenly used that, she didn't even dare to think. The man who dodged the wind blade quickly recovered from his terror. It could be seen he was the strongest of the four. In just less than a second, he pulled the trigger on Yimo. The moment he did, he finally felt relieved. This person was too strong. If he didn't react fast, perhaps he would be like his three other partners. The instant the gun sounded, he felt a figure dash across in front of him, and after which, the hand holding the gun felt cold. He subconsciously looked at his hands, and they were all sliced off. Still, not much blood came out. Then, Yimo's words came out. I want to slice off your hands. You think you can run?" He turned around and saw Yimo carrying Wendong and stared at him coldly from not far. Everyone who had their hands cut off all looked at Yimo as though they were dumb. How was someone so horrifyingly strong? What did he just use? Get on the car? Yimo looked coldly at the North Sand members and said. A short but fierce man suddenly yelled in anger, "Why should I listen to you? I'm not going on the car. What can you do? I won't frown at all if you're going to kill me." Yimo didn't even look at the man and just threw a fireball. The short man yelled for a brief moment and made no noise. He was consumed by the fireball and kept rolling on the ground. His mouth shape showed he was yelling, but there was no noise. There was terror and begging for mercy in his eyes, but Yimo's eyes were cold and had no intention of letting him go. Han Yin saw that Yimo actually shot out a fireball and suddenly shivered. She had tried to overestimate him again and again, but didn't expect to have underestimated him for the second time. He could send out fireballs casually? This was something in the legends. No wonder he killed Otanhu. With his power, even a few Otanhu would be no match for him. Han Yin suddenly thought of Yimo's words that he was going to burn the data. She thought those were just angry words before, but now, she had realized those were very real. The remaining three looked at Yimo in terror. They got in the back seats of the car without Yimo saying anything else. Then, Yimo sealed their movement before coldly saying, "What you did to Sister Dong, I will make you pay slowly." Han Yin hesitated a long time before saying, "Yimo, if you can give me that data, perhaps I can save her." "What? You can save Wendong? Do you know her situation? Although I can recover her damaged meridians and internal injuries, but her life force is dissipated. Do you know what it is? Perhaps you just thought the heart stopped beating." Yimo didn't believe that there was anyone else who could recover life force other than him. Han Yin shook her head and said, "I don't know what is life force, but my master said 1,000-year lotus seed heart can save someone who died not long ago." This time, Yimo looked at Han Yin in surprise. After a little while, he said, "You actually know about 1,000-year lotus seed heart. It seems you understand quite a lot. Didn't your master teach you that it can only save someone who died within 1 incense time? If you can find one in half an incense time, then I owe you one. Hanyin shook her head and said, No need for that long. I can take it out now. Then she took out a jade bottle and gave it to Yimo. Yimo looked at it. It was indeed a 1,000-year lotus seed heart. There was actually such a thing on Earth. Yimo almost forgot about saving Wendong, but he quickly came to his senses and carried Wendong into a room in the hotel. He told Han Yen to keep watch over those North Sand people. However, that old couple was actually not inside. If the seed heart arrived in his hands earlier, he could make an entire bottle of medical pills with it. But now, he could only turn it into a serum and save Wendong. It was just him who could do it, though. If it were someone else, they wouldn't be able to save Wendong even if they had the 1,000-year lotus seed heart. Yimo had a lot of recovery pills inside his ring. With the seed heart now, Wendong's heart soon started to beat again slowly. An hour later, Yimo recovered some of Wendong's damaged meridians and internal injuries. Her breathing had stabilized, and Yimo knew she was fine before finally releasing a gasp of relief. You really saved her? Han Yin obviously didn't know how precious the lotus seed heart was. She knew it was precious, but only heard of it. In the depths of the mountains, she found it unintentionally. Her master complimented her for having good fortune, but even her master didn't know how to use it and just heard it could be used to save people. However, Yimo actually used this to reanimate Wendong. Yimo nodded and said, Yes, Sister Dong is fine now. I will definitely do what I promised to do, but I still want to ask you a question. Where did you get this from? After asking, Yimo grew anxious. A 1,000-year lotus seed heart usually appeared as 36 together. Since Han Yin could get one, where was the other 35? This thing was not only able to reanimate the dead, but had huge uses for cultivation. If there was news of it, he would dump everything aside and search for that first. Chapter 190. Inquiry. Chapter 190. Inquiry. Han Yin looked at Yimo and seemed to know what Yimo was thinking, but she still said, A few years ago, my master took me to gather herbs and I found it around there. I was at a cliff, and there were two birds fighting. The seed came out from one of the birds' beak. Later, I felt it smelt good, and so I took it and showed it to my master. My master told me it was the 1,000-year lotus seed heart, but master said although it was precious, people rarely knew how to use it. I didn't expect you to know how. Yimo looked at Han Yan's expression and knew she wouldn't say where it was. However, Yimo wouldn't give up now. He thought and asked, Can you draw out the environment where you found the seed? She hesitated a bit, but still took out a pen and paper and drew the surrounding. She drew a cliff. The top was very broad, and there were some chrysanthemum at the cliff side. Yimo took the drawing and observed it. He immediately knew this map was about the same as what Imokong gave him. It should be the same place. Imokong said that the place had precious herbs, and it seemed to be true. Yimo took the map and was excited. If he found this place, wouldn't he be able to find a lot of precious herbs immediately? Perhaps he could use that to break through to stage 4. Yimo knew that without outside world factor, he would never be able to reach stage 4 just by cultivating himself. There were 9 stages in Qi gathering. If he reached stage 4, that would be intermediate stage Qi gathering. If he could make his flying sword, he would be able to fly on it. Yimo was excited just thinking about it. What sort of notion was flying on sword in a place like Earth? Yimo, can I ask you a question? Han Yin hesitated for a long time, but still couldn't resist her curiosity. Yimo nodded.
Ask.
Although Han Yin didn't say where, she obviously didn't draw random things. And he guessed it was the same place Imokong drew, but he didn't know where exactly it was. However, it was rare to see chrysanthemum groaning in a cliff. What projectile was that you used to slice off their arms? And what was that fireball? Han Yin thought if she had this projectile, her battle power would increase by many folds. Yimo smiled and said, If I say once you cultivate inner Qi to a certain degree, you can form those fireball and invisible projectile, would you believe me? Han Yin made the look that I'd be an idiot to believe you. Then, she said, It's okay if you don't want to say. I've seen too many masters, but none could condense their Qi into a fireball. Yimo didn't fuss with this question and gave Wendong to Han Yin. Let's leave here now. After I ask some questions, then decide what to do. An hour later, Yimo drove the car to a distant place and pulled the three out. Other than the beautiful woman who still seemed calm, the other two men were already horrified. This woman seemed to be the head. He casually beat the two men unconscious and looked at the woman and said, "You know I will ask one by one. If you say any lies, you should have seen what I can do." The lady bit her lips and said after a while, "If you let me go, I can agree to any request you have, much less a few questions." Then, there was some rudiness on her face. Yimo sighed. This woman was an acting genius. He just cut off one of her hands, but now she was sexually luring him. "You don't have the right to argue with me. If you don't want to say, then don't. I will ask someone else." Yimo didn't have the slightest good impression to this woman. He was prepared to kill her as soon as he was done. Hearing Yimo's words, this woman unexpectedly didn't make more requests and just said, "You should know we're from North Sand, and so is Wendong. Her pal stole important data from North Sand and ran. We're just responsible to bring her back. How did you know to ambush us at Xiangshan Valley?" Yimo couldn't understand this. Without Han Zixin, he wouldn't even go there. How would people from North Sand know? The young lady didn't hesitate to say, "North Sand has 6 major bases across the globe. We're from the Asian base. It was an order from the base for us to wait at Xiangshan Valley. I heard it was because we got a new advisor. It should be his idea." "New advisor? How did he know?" Yimo asked curiously. The lady said once again, "He's called Dongfang Shi. When we found that Wendong was related to that inn in Xiangshan Valley, he told us to not startle anyone. We just needed to hide outside the inn. He said that no matter if the person who got the data knew Wendong well or not, they would come back for more after a while. Then, we could capture the person." "Dongfang Shi?" Yimo repeated. He felt this name was very familiar. Seeing Yimo talk about Dongfang Shi, the lady quickly said, "It said that many things were planned by him ever since he came to the Asian base." Then, the lady secretly looked at Yimo, seeing that he was in deep thought, seemingly interested in this Dongfang Shi. She said, "I've seen this Dongfang Shi once before. He is lustful, but it's said that his main purpose coming here was for North Sand to help him get revenge. His enemy is Yimo." Speaking till now, Yimo had understood who this Dongfang Shi was. He was the original advisor of Nanqing. If he didn't attack to their base, or if Ningqing Xue was taken away, Dongfang Shi's plans would have succeeded. Yimo sneered. He didn't go find him, but he wanted revenge. However, this guy was indeed big trouble. Life wasn't safe one day with him. He was different from those big families. Those big families had concerns, but he didn't. Yimo casually knocked the lady out and asked the other two. The news were about the same. "Don't kill these 3. I just called my grandpa. My grandpa said to bring them back to Beijing." Just when Yimo wanted to kill the 3, Han Yin spoke. "Okay, but there's one thing I need to talk to you about. As for your data, I will find it. You don't need to come with me now. You just need to bring these 3 back, and please take care of Wendong. When she is well, she will leave herself." Yimo wanted to find the 1,000-year lotus seed heart place and then go North Sand. To him, that was much more important. Nothing was more important than his cultivation. If it was before they met North Sand, Han Yin would jeer, but now, she understood that Yimo was right, that she was cumbersome following him. Yimo's power far exceeded hers. Even with her pride, her movement technique might be far inferior than Yimo's. She didn't even see how Yimo got Wendong from the car an hour earlier. As for how Yimo knew 4 North Sand people came, she didn't understand either. Seeing Han Yan's silence, Yimo said again, "Don't worry, I will return your 1,000 lotus seed heart." After hesitating for a while, Han Yin finally agreed to Yimo's words, but requested that Yimo called them as soon as he had news of the data. Chapter 191. Relax. Chapter 191. Relax. Luo Tsang. Ning Qingxue didn't expect to get Su Jingwen's call. Her first reaction was that was Su Jingwen going to ask her for those 3 beads? She didn't know why, but she was very scared that Su Jingwen would ask her about these 3 beads. If she really wanted them, she could only give it back. Qingxue, are you with Emo right now? I want to talk to him for a bit. Su Jingwen's voice sounded careful, as though scared that Ning Qingxue would misunderstand something. Ning Qingxue felt relieved, thinking that Su Jingwen probably didn't know her relationship with Emo, but she didn't want to explain and just said, I'm not with Emo. Su Jingwen didn't know, felt strange, but quickly said, Isn't Emo at Luotsang too? Did you not see him? Emo is at Luotsang? Ning Qingxue repeated, but thought, when did Emo come to Luotsang? Brother Yi is at Luotsang? That's impossible. This time, it was Qi Wanqing speaking. She just walked into the room and heard what Ning Qingxue said. What Su Jingwen said later, Ning Qingxue didn't know. She hung up the call in disappointment. She also thought that Emo couldn't possibly come to Luotsang, and Su Jingwen probably misunderstood their relationship and thought she was with Emo. That was probably why she thought Emo was at Luotsang. However, what did Su Jingwen want Emo for? Ning Qingxue thought about last time at Su Jingwen's birthday and how Emo danced with her. She suddenly felt annoyed, but looked at Qi Wanqing after a good while. Wanqing, I think I should go back. Qi Wanqing nodded and said, my dad wants me to go study at England. I can't even go back to the military. I have to go. Qingxue, take care. Ning Qingxue nodded and said after half a beat, Wanqing, can you tell me, do you like Emo? Qi Wanqing blushed, but eventually shook her head. I don't know, but I really like being together with him. I feel very comfortable with him, safe and happy. But I don't know if this is like. But if I do, then I should be jealous when I see him with other women. But last time when I saw him with your aunt, I felt they should be together and didn't feel jealousy at all. Then, Qi Wanqing's face recovered after a good while. She turned and looked at Ning Qingux and said, Qingxue, do you think this is like? My dad also felt my thoughts are strange, and that's why he told me to go England. I originally didn't really want to go, but my mother also agreed this time. I don't know. Ning Qingxue shook her head subconsciously. She didn't even know how she felt about Emo herself, so how could she judge Qi Wanqing's feelings? Qi Wanqing looked down. After a while, she said, My grandma once told me that if you like someone, you need to grab him, don't go regretting at the end. However, Grandma doesn't know that not all people you like can be grasped. So, this time, my parents want to send me away, although I don't want to go, but after thinking about it, perhaps what they said is right. I'm leaving in 2 days. I came here to tell you about it. Yeah, I should go back too. Ning Qingxue suddenly felt very fatigued. She would rather be a strong woman at Ning Family Medicine than be so tired. You must grasp what you like. But can you? Qi Wanqing suddenly raised her head and asked, Qingxue, do you like Emo? Ning Qingxue's eyes were lost. After a while, she replied, I didn't know before, but now, I think I probably like him. I don't know when it happened, but, Wanqing, I want to go on a holiday and relax. Perhaps when I came back, I would be staying at Ninghai or go back to U State and continue my previous job. If you come back from England, come look for me. Qingxue, take care. I will be back at most 2 years. When I come back, I will definitely look for you. Perhaps at that time, you would have found your new life goal again and even have a family. Qi Wanqing understood Ning Qingxue's mentality the most. If Emo was just a dependence or gratitude for her, then Ning Qingxue might have really fallen into a single-sided love. Ning Qingxue shook her head and didn't argue with Qi Wanqing's word. Even if she couldn't be with Emo, she still had her other life. As for starting a family, she never thought about it. Su Jingwen put down the phone. She didn't expect Emo to not be with Ning Qingxue. In that case, should she still go to Luotsang? Jingwen, what are you thinking about? Su Jingwen's mother walked in. She saw her daughter sitting dumbfounded at the table, and so she asked immediately. Nothing, just... She was about to tell her mother the master who sold the charms could be at Luotsang. However, her mother interrupted her. Jingwen, Wei Zheng is back. He just called me. He would be at Ninghai soon. Really? Wei Zheng's cousin has already graduated? Su Jingwen's face was full of joy and surprise. Wei Zheng was Xie Wei Zheng. He grew up together with Su Jingwen. From young to maturity, Xie Wei Zheng was a true genius. Not only was he outstandingly smart, He covered for Su Jingwen everywhere. However, he went to America to study, causing their contact to grow less. The last time they met was 2 years ago when Su Jingwen went to America for her mother's condition. The first reaction she got when hearing that Xia Weizhang came back was joy. Look at how happy you are. Weizhang won't be leaving again this time. He's prepared to develop his career at Ninghai. You need to help him then? Su Jingwen's mom obviously knew that her daughter had a very good impression of Xia Weizhang. By the way, Mom, I forgot to tell you. That master who sold me the charms seemed to have appeared in Luotsang. I might know him. Although Su Jingwen was sure Yi Mo was that master, but she wasn't 100% sure before she got to see him. Really? Jingwen, if that master is at Luotsang, you must invite him over. Su Jingwen's mother was also filled with surprise and joy. But he might just be passing by Luotsang, Sai. Su Jingwen thought about Yimo's voice and smile and caressed the 2 coarse beads on her bracelet, seemingly lost in thought. 3 days later, Ning Qingxue went back to Yu State. She just stayed there for 2 days and then went with a tourist group to relax. With Li Mumei's observation, Lan Yu knew what her daughter was thinking and could only sigh. When she came back, perhaps she would go back to her old life. Originally, she thought without the harassment of the Song family, Ning Qingxue would soon return to her former self. However, Lan Yu was disappointed. She still seemed to be depressed. Perhaps it was good for her to go relax. This time, she went to a proper tourist organization. Although she wanted to relax by herself, she knew the world was far from as safe as it looked ever since she went a flowing snake. God State Tourism was the biggest and most appropriate tourism company in Yu State, and it was quite famous throughout the country. What was different to other tourism companies was that this tourism company decided pretty much all the locations and designed the route. One specialty was adventure. This company had a lot of wealth and had safety guarantee. This was because they had their own helicopter. The only thing was that it was too expensive. However, this price was irrelevant for rich people. Since they had a lot of safety assurance, it was normal their prices were a bit high. Although Ning Qingxue wanted to go to Tibet, but this company had no plans recently to go to Tibet. Their plan was to go to Shenongjia. Due to their power and large crew, although their prices were many times more expensive than others, many people still chose this company. There were 22 people altogether going to Shenongjia this time. Most of them were the elite of the job market, and some were entrepreneur bosses. However, there were only 7 females, including Ning Qingxue. The tour guide was a girl called Chui Lin. She was in her 20s and looked very lively. She was articulate when telling about the stories and had a vibrant display of body language. After they went to the top of Shenongjia, they didn't go to Shenong sacrificial ground. Instead, they went to a forest to seek the footprints of savages. This was one of the set journeys. Although it was said to find savages in the forests, the tourists knew that it was just a saying to attract tourists. The most enticing was the 3-night stay in the forest untouched by human activity and watch the morning mist in the forest. Even with safety measures, there were too much unpredictable things in this prehistoric forest. The tourist company couldn't take them too deep and just stayed on the outside. Perhaps Ning Qingxue was too pretty. So many young men offered to carry her bag when they were climbing hills in order to start a conversation. However, Ning Qingxue's was not too hot nor cold. She only occasionally spoke to the 2 girls beside her. Most of the time, she didn't really talk and just carried her bag and walked. It was as though she didn't come for a holiday but to walk. After some time, everyone knew her personality and didn't bother her. Chapter 192. Strong Enemy. Chapter 192. Strong Enemy. Yi Mo searched for large amounts of information online and, after comparing them, locked 2 locations. One was the Yundu Valley, and another was Shenongjia. Yi Mo found out that the chrysanthemum at Shenongjia was more expensive and precious. The place it grew was very hard to reach for normal people, even if they had a helicopter. It seemed the place Han Yin drew was at Shenongjia. Eventually, Yi Mo decided on going to Shenongjia to find the chrysanthemum. Perhaps in this place, he would be able to reach the place Mo Kong and Han Yin was talking about. Of course, Yi Mo wouldn't go with a tourist group. He knew the flowers were at a cliff, so as soon as he entered Shinnongjia, he went to the no-people district. The place was broad, but there were countless dangers there too. However, it wasn't hard for Yimo. It was only 2,600 meters above sea level. The third day after Yimo entered the Shinnongjia, he found the chrysanthemum at a cliff. However, the place was not so similar to where Imokong drew. Although they were both cliffs, there were no flat ground and the top wasn't too broad either. Just when Yimo was prepared to go down and try a different peak, he heard voices from the middle of the cliff. Yimo scanned his spirit sense down but couldn't find if there were people near. Were there really savages? Yimo did a close study of the geology of Shinnongjia before he came. Other than some no-man lands and dangerous districts, most of the Shinnongjia had been excavated by the country and has become a tourist hotspot. Just when Yimo wanted to go down, the voice sounded again. It's not here. Looks like it's at Chietua Peak. Let's go there then. The faster we get it, the better. Another voice sounded. It was sharper than the previous one. Yimo heard it clear. Two people actually climbed down the cliff. Yimo finally found a rope at a corner. He was too bothered with checking if this was the place Imokong said that he didn't even notice there was a rope there. The two people could climb down such a steep cliff. Even with ropes, it meant that they were pretty good. Yimo just managed to hide himself when the two agile men climbed up the cliff quickly. Both of them wore gray clothes. The man who first came up was in his 40s and tied up his hair. He looked like an actor from ancient drama. The man who followed was about the same but had short hair. There was a scar stretching from his ear to his mouth that looked very scary. Chietua Peak? Yimo thought. Were these two looking for the same thing as him? He saw the two pack things up and took a quick break before rushing down the cliff. Yimo followed too. He was very curious as to what they were trying to find. Yimo didn't know where Chietua Peak was, so he needed the two to lead the way. After following them for a while, he knew these two were indeed not bad, at least about the same as Otanhu. Were they from the hidden sects? The long-haired man suddenly stopped and looked back and around before turning to the other man and saying, Cha-san, I feel that there's someone staring at us. Do you have this feeling too? The man frowned and said after a while, You're thinking too much. No one else know about it other than us. Plus, it's this place. It's normal to have that feeling. The long-haired man nodded. MHM, I probably sensed wrong. We should hurry. I don't feel safe until we get that thing. Plus, it was too hard for us to get out this time. The two quickly continued forward. However, Yimo took note. He just got near to them a little and was almost found out by this long-haired man. This guy really had something. After another hour or so, the two finally came to another valley. At the bottom, they quickly climbed up a cliff. Yimo followed without hesitation. Once they reached the top, Yimo immediately knew this was the place he wanted to find. So it was actually called Chietua Peak. Looking at how familiar they were with it, it wasn't the first time they came. The top was a big flat area. From afar, one could still smell the chrysanthemum. However, Yimo's spirit sense immediately noticed that there was already a man in his 30s at the top. His skin was white and had short hair. However, he seemed very ethereal standing at the top. He carried a long sword behind his back. No wonder I felt I was followed. It was you, Bien Pu. The long-haired man sneered. The man called Bien Pu didn't expect someone to come so quick and sneered. It seems your luck is bad. You found out about this news too and was met by me. Then, the man called Bien Pu shook his head. Yimo frowned. He really didn't feel worried about this long-haired man and Cha-san, but this Bien Pu gave him a feeling that he couldn't see through. He even noticed Bien Pu look towards his side. If that was real, then this Bien Pu was too scary, even if he didn't know if they were looking for the same thing as him. Bien Pu, our power is about the same. Although you can beat any of us alone, but with us two together, you won't be able to win. How about we work together and split it into 3, 1 each? This time, it was Cha-san who talked. 1 each? Humph. You overestimate yourself. Take my fist first. Then, Bien Pu stepped forward and launched a fist. Cha-san hummed and returned with a fist. He will make Bien Pu know that he was not a coward. Clash. Cha-san actually took many steps back and was stopped by the long-haired man. There was blood in the corner of his mouth. Just one fist, and he was injured. You broke through. Cha-san looked at Bien Pu, who didn't move at all. He didn't expect Bien Pu to break through to the next state. In the entire hidden sects, the amount of people who was able to break through to Earth level could be counted. Bien Pu was so young, but he already reached Earth level. What was this? Brother Bien, we admit defeat. The thing is yours. Let's go, Cha-san. The long-haired man saluted with his fist and was about to drag Cha-san down the cliff. Bien Pu sneered and pulled out the long sword from behind his back and caressed it. Then, he said, "You know there's red leaf pumpkin fruit here. Do you think you can still go? What do you want?" The long-haired man released Cha-san and pulled out a small axe from behind him. Cha-san, on the other hand, knew that if they didn't defeat Bien Pu today, they would probably lose their lives here. He also grabbed the short dagger at his waist. "What do I want? Of course it's your petty lives." Then, Bien Pu seemed to fly as his sword sliced towards the two. A gust of blade light spilled, encompassing the two. Even Yemo, who was meters out, felt a frosty feeling. Such an overlord-like sword technique. Cha-san yelled and focused all his energy into the dagger and swept towards that sword veil. His force seemed to be even a little stronger than Bien Pu. However, Yemo's spirit sense noticed that his leg was shaking. Yemo sighed. Even if he wasn't scared at all, Bien Pu's sword wasn't something he could stop, much less when he was already afraid before the fight. Plus the wound he received before, his situation was dire. Yemo could tell from the momentum of the sword that he was no match for Bien Pu now. The long-haired man suddenly threw his short axe and turned to run, completely disregarding Cha-san's situation. Yemo sighed. If the two worked together, perhaps they could fight a few rounds with this Bien Pu. However, this long-haired guy ran, meaning that their defeat was inevitable. Cha-san, who was already afraid, saw that the long-haired man run, felt more worried. His dagger that had some momentum slumbered. Bien Pu sneered. His blade light moved down a little, and this white ray pierced Cha-san's waist without hesitation. This wasn't it. The blade light turned back and hit the long-haired man's axe. Clank. The long-haired man's axe actually flew back and pierced into the long-haired man's back as though it had eyes. The long-haired man gave a howl and fell to the ground while the handle of the axe on his back wobbled. At this moment, Cha-san split into two parts and died. Then, Bien Pu raised his sword and looked. There didn't seem to be a drop of blood on it. He nodded satisfactorily and looked towards where Yemo was hiding and blandly said, "Do I have to invite you out?" Yemo knew he was caught, so there was no point in hiding. He stood up from behind the stone. Yemo knew he was caught, so there was no point in hiding. He stood up from behind the stone. Although Bien Pu knew there was a person behind there, he was still surprised when Yemo came out. He didn't expect Yemo to be so young. He looked just in his 20s. "Where are you from?" Bien Pu studied Yemo and asked. If the long-haired man didn't say he was following him, he really might not be able to find Yemo. That long-haired guy was a pig brain. How do you follow from the front? The reason he could kill those two so quickly was because he used their fear towards Earth-level masters. If they really fought with their lives, it wouldn't be so easy for him, and he might not even be able to kill them in the end. However, this youth couldn't even be found by those two, so he should be quite strong. Moreover, Yemo was so young that he was shocked. Yemo compared Bien Pu's sword technique to the one who used sword at the Yi family mansion. He found that Bien Pu's sword technique was on another level. He didn't want to fight someone like him, even if he had to. He didn't want to now. However, he knew that Bien Pu said that there was a red leaf pumpkin fruit here. With Bien Pu's cruelty, how could he let him go? Would you believe it if I said I came to Shinongjia for a holiday? Yemo scanned the surrounding with his spirit sense. It was very hard to escape here. Other than one way down the mountain, there were cliffs everywhere. Bien Pu smiled, but his face was expressionless. "I believe you, but that is useless for you. Watch my sword." As he spoke, his sword turned into a gust of white and rolled towards Yemo. Even with spirit sense, he couldn't notice that the sword had sliced towards him. Yemo's face drastically changed. He had to twist his body quickly to barely avoid this sword. The blade sliced where Yimo was standing before and created a deep mark. If this slice connected, Yimo would have been cut in half already. Yimo stood far at the other side of the cliff, staring at Bienpu, while his spirit sense was focused on his wrist. He didn't expect someone like Bienpu to use sneak attacks on him. Even so, Yimo wasn't annoyed. In his view, no matter what means one used in a fight, one would win as long as they killed the opponent. Not bad, you dodged that attack. Bienpo was surprised but soon calmed down. After one sentence, his sword swept towards Yimo again. Yimo had focused his attention on Bienpo's movement. Seeing that he attacked again, he knew he was at a disadvantage without a weapon, especially when Bienpo was stronger than him. Even if they had the same power, it would be very hard to defeat Bienpo without a weapon. His only thought was to find an opportunity to dash down the cliff and run. This time, Bienpo sliced 7 times, which connected into one slice, sealing all of Yimo's retreat path. Yimo casually took out Xian Daoist's whip. He was sure that if he didn't have spirit sense, a few of him would have died already. Even with spirit sense, many segments of the whip broke after this round of attack. The remnant of the whip was not much longer than Bienpo's sword. Xian Daoist's whip was a not bad attacking artifact, but it was like grass under Bienpo's hacks. If he didn't have this whip, perhaps Yimo would have lost an arm already. From the start till now, Yimo was suppressed. His clothes had been torn apart by the sword chi, and there were 7 or 8 slashes on his ripped body. It looked very scary. However, Yimo knew that this was only the first round of attacks. Bienpo was too scary. Was there such a difference in one level? If he was still stage 2 now, he would have been long dead. Even now, if Yimo didn't think of a way, death awaited him. Bienpo's second round of attacks still weren't able to kill Yimo. He stopped his attack as his eyes grew cold. He stared at Yimo for a while before asking, "Just who are you? How can you survive under my 7 consecutive strikes? And where did you get your whip from? Speak." Yimo sneered. Although Bienpo was much stronger than him, he still found something. When Xian Daoist's whip was broken, he found Bienpo's weakness. Bienpo must have just reached Earth level. Although his 7 strikes were strong, there was a gap between each attack. This gap gave Yimo a sliver of chance. Without this sliver, even if Yimo had the whip, he would have been killed. Stop wasting time. If you want to fight, then fight. Yimo calmed his chi and quickly thought of how he could use his wind blade to get in a surprise attack and then run. Okay, I'll see how long you can last. Bienpo sneered. His long sword changed again, carrying this white light as he charged towards Yimo. Ning Qingxue, what are you looking at? It was night time. The tour guide saw that at a far-off place. Ning Qingxue kept looking at a big rock. Look at this. Ning Qingxue pointed at that huge rock and said worriedly, there are 2 people fighting. What's that? Was there illusions at Shinnongjia? Not right, stop, Cui Lin said. She saw 2 shadows fighting, but they had just split. They're fighting again. Cui Lin saw the 2 fight. She had been a tour guide for a few years, but she had never encountered this sort of thing. Cui Lin turned and looked at Ning Qingxue. She found that Ning Qingxue seemed to have more attention on one of the figures. She seemed to be quite excited. Cui Lin didn't care but said to herself, if it was at Wuliang Mountain, I would have thought it was a goddess practicing sword. This is too fascinating. I'll get everyone to come and see. Then, Cui Lin quickly went to call people. Ning Qingxue, however, stared dumbly at the figure on the rock. Her heart was beating rapidly as though it was going to jump out of her chest. She could feel one of them was Yimo. The moves and shape, it was exactly the same as the person of her dreams. Was she thinking too much? If Ning Qingxue didn't also see it, she would have thought she was dreaming. Or was it because she yearned for Yimo too much that she had the illusion? Illusion? Ning Qingxue suddenly thought. Were there actually 2 people fighting and the sun reflected it here? The 2 figures on the big rock gradually thinned out until it moved to the side and disappeared. Ning Qingxue's heart continued beating rapidly and quickly took out the telescope on her chest and looked at the 2 figures. She felt that one of them was definitely Yimo. She was actually so sure it was him. Yimo's figure had appeared in her brain countless times, so she knew she wouldn't see wrong. Ning Qingxue didn't spend much time until she was shocked as though she was struck by lightning. On a distant peak, there two obfuscated figure fighting. It's real. It's actually real. Yimo, is that really you? Why are you here? Ning Qingxue was screaming in her heart. She hoped that she could just teleport to that cliff and help Yimo even if it was throwing a stone at his opponent. However, she knew that cliff was too far from here. Even though the sun was good today, once the mist came up, she wouldn't be able to see there. Ning Qingxue held the telescope, but she could only watch from there. She had no way of helping. Although Yimo had found a way to avoid the blade light, after the third round, there were more slashes on his body. Other than a few whips, Yimo couldn't even make a threatening attack. Yimo's whip had just turned into a handle. There were blood trickling down his chest to his waist that slowly dampened his pants. Yimo's face was getting pale. He knew that if this continued, the next round of blades would be his end. However, this Bienpose was not only scarily strong in his attacks, but his defenses were rather strong too. After 3 rounds of attacks, Yimo couldn't even find a place to attack. Yimo knew he only had one chance. If he wasted it, then he would be dead. Bienpa also breathed heavily. His clothes were also ripped by Yimo's whip. A few whip marks could even be seen clearly. You're a rather strong opponent, but even so, this day next year will be your remembrance day. Bienpa didn't mind the light wounds on him at all and attacked again. Yimo suddenly threw the hilt of the whip to Bienpa and jumped as though he was jumping off a cliff. You're asking to die. Bienpa saw that Yimo dared to make a forced escape and sneered. His long sword turned into a white ray that struck towards Yimo, not even bothering with the hilt Yimo threw at him. Chapter 194. Shocking Battle. Chapter 194. Shocking Battle. Bienpa saw that Yimo couldn't dodge and was about to be cut in half by the sword, but just as the sword was about to hit. However, Yimo suddenly dropped down as though he didn't charge straight but was free-falling. Such amazing control. Being able to do this in mid-air, even Bienpa was amazed. But even so, he didn't go easy at all. His sword turned 90 degrees without a trace and cut down towards Yimo again. Yimo had to admire Bienpa for his sword technique. He held back some power on each sword so he could change moves at any time. I'll let you guys die together. Bienpa saw that the place Yimo landed was where the long-haired man lay. He sneered as his sword attacked fast. At that moment, Bienpa froze. He found that Yimo disappeared. His sword stopped, and Yimo used this opportunity to escape. He used this technique for Daoist Xian, but he wasn't sure whether it would work against Bienpa. When Bienpa noticed he disappeared, he froze for that little bit of time, but that time was enough for him to escape. Invisibility artifact? Bienpa immediately found Yimo's location and attacked him again. Despite using invisibility to escape this certain death sword, the blade light still slashed a deep wound in his back. Before Bienpa attacked him again, Yimo threw the short axe in his hand out. Small trick. Bienpa sneered. The moment he saw Yimo charge towards that long-haired man, he guessed that Yimo might use that axe. As he expected, Yimo's axe flew over towards his shoulder. Bienpa sneered. This young man wanted to cut his right arm off. This guy had completely overestimated himself. This axe still had a howl to it. Obviously, Yimo wasn't very good at projectiles. But soon, Bienpa noticed something weird. The frosty wind with the axe was a bit shocking. He couldn't understand how did a simple axe carry such frosty wind. But in that moment, the axe already came to his right shoulder. He didn't even think and turned his sword to deflect the axe. He wanted to do what he did to the long-haired man. However, what he couldn't understand was that before the axe reached his right shoulder, it suddenly turned and attacked his left shoulder, but its momentum was a lot weaker. Idiot! Bienpa sneered once again. Ordinary masters at projectiles knew how to make them turn midway. It was with the way one used inner chi. To him, Yimo obviously was not familiar with it because when the axe turned, it became so much slower. Even if the speed didn't slow down, it would be impossible for him to be hit, much less when it was slowed. Bienpa wanted to use his left hand to grab the axe, but he felt something was wrong. His right arm was cut broken by some unknown projectile, and that wasn't it. This unseen frosty wind didn't stop and sliced towards his waist. Not good, Bienpe immediately retreated and, at the same time, threw out the axe while picking up his broken pace. There wasn't any stopping between these movements. That's how fast he reacted. Guillemot didn't have time to sigh that he didn't cut Bienpe's waist since the axe was flying over. The same time he dodged the axe, Guillemot knew that as long as he didn't kill Bienpe, he wasn't out of danger. Even without a hand, it would still be very easy for Bienpe to kill him. He calculated everything and even used the axe to cover his wind blade, but wasn't able to cut Bienpe's waist off. From this, it could be seen how strong the other party was. Luckily, he aimed for the arm first. Otherwise, Bienpe could have easily seen through if he aimed towards his waist right at the start. When Bienpe retreated to the cliffside, so did Guillemot. He was very angry having his arm cut off in a strange way by an insect. He grabbed his long sword with his left hand and didn't talk. His sword spun around and was going to encompass Guillemot again. Guillemot kept his spirit sense on the sword. Soon, he felt relieved. Although Bienpe's left-hand sword technique was very good, it was far from his right hand. It was the same sword light, but Guillemot clearly captured where the sword was. Guillemot didn't even think and grabbed towards the back of the single-bladed sword. At the same time, he focused his chi wanting to control the sword. Even though his left hand wasn't as good as his right hand, if Guillemot let Bienpe use his sword technique, he would still die. Bienpe didn't expect Guillemot to be able to grab the back of the sword. He sneered and was about to gather energy to pull back the sword and cut Guillemot from the waist, but at this time, a huge power came from the sword's back. Guillemot actually jumped out of the cliff and pulled him out too. Bienpe wouldn't let go of his sword at all and twisted the sword. There was a huge power, and Guillemot immediately let go. You want me to fall off the cliff with you? Keep dreaming. I won't even let my sword go with you. Bienpe twisted in mid-air, and before his breath of inner chi finished, he dashed towards the cliff again in mid-air. Guillemot sneered. Although he was falling, he raised his hands at the same time. Multiple wind blades sliced towards the space between Bienpe and the edge of the cliff. As soon as Bienpe reached the edge, he felt multiple frosty winds coming at him. He remembered how strong it was and didn't think before turning around and raising his sword to block it. Not good. As soon as Bienpe dodged those frosty winds, he realized he wasn't on the cliff, but outside it. His inner chi was exhausted after dodging the projectile, so it would be too hard for it to bring him back to the cliff. Bienpe started to fall rapidly. Even so, he wanted to use his sword and stop on the side of the cliff. However, Guillemot wouldn't let him have it his way. Although he was falling too, he had wind-controlling technique and was in a much better situation than Bienpe. He kept attacking Bienpe until he didn't have enough inner chi to climb up the wall. Then, Guillemot threw a few fireballs at him. Although it didn't reach him, Bienpe's face changed drastically. If it was on the ground, those few fireballs wouldn't be more threatening than a few bricks. However, he had nowhere to exert force and could only see the fireball come at him. I didn't think I would die here, Bienpe yelled furiously. He threw his long sword out. Boom! All the fireballs landed on Bienpe's body. Bienpe howled and his entire body disappeared in the fireball. The slowly falling body immediately fell down like a cannonball disappearing from Guillemot's eyes. Although he fell, his sword still flew towards Guillemot. Guillemot's chi was almost used up, so he could only barely avoid to get his vitals hit. The sword still passed through his back. Guillemot, who was already bloodied, immediately started to bleed like a fountain. If he didn't dodge this at the last minute, he would have probably been killed already. But even so, Guillemot felt dizzy. Luckily, this sword dragged him to the edge of the cliff, in the fuzziness of consciousness. Guillemot didn't even think and just grabbed onto what he could. Rip. The vines couldn't seem to bear Guillemot's weight and just slowed him before he continued falling. Guillemot bit his tongue and reached for things to grab on the cliff. He would grab anything he could, but these only slowed his speed and didn't stop him from falling. Ning Qingxue saw that the two figures fell down the cliff and was shocked. She could no longer hold the telescope as it fell down and wobbled on her neck. Here, quick, I saw it here. With Cui Lin's voice, More than 10 members of the tourist group came. Where? Where are the people fighting? One young man asked immediately. Chui Lin looked at the huge rock in shock. After a while, she said in shock, Ning Qingxue and I both saw it. There were two figures fighting on this rock. Why did it disappear so quick? By the way, Ning Qingxue, you were always here. When did it disappear? I think your eyes flashed. Do you think this is the home of a goddess at Wuliang Mountain? One of them immediately joked. Although Chui Lin was a tour guide, she was very competitive and quickly said, I really saw it. If you don't believe me, ask Ning Qingxue. Seeing that everyone was looking at her, she took a while to react and pointed at a distant peak and said, I seem to have saw people there. I want to go have a look. Seeing that everyone was looking at her, she took a while to react and pointed at a distant peak and said, I seem to have saw people there. I want to go have a look. It seemed to be due to Ning Qingxue not wanting to talk much, but no one doubted her words. After a while, a man in his 40s said, Don't think about it. It may seem not far to you, but it's a long journey to walk there. Plus, this is a no-man's land. We're just in the outskirts. The no-man's land of Shinongjia is very dangerous, so it's best if you don't go in. What danger is there? I will go have a look. A youth in his 20s heard Ning Qingxue's words and wanted to show off. He ran a few steps forward, turned back and said, It's only some time. Shinongjia is no longer the same as before. They say there are savages, but which one of you saw? Arg. This youth was originally just joking, but when he wanted to turn, he felt the bottom of his foot was empty as he fell down. Luckily, he reacted fast and grabbed the rim of the hole that appeared out of nowhere. At this moment, a few people reacted and came to help pull him up. This youth looked at the pitch-black hole. He was scared, sweating. Half a beat later, he said still shakily, If I fell down, I would have lost my life for sure. Not good, retreat. There are more places cracking open nearby. Another man found that the ground was cracking at where people were standing. The people were frightened and retreated. Just when people retreated to the edge, the holes that cracked open rumbled and suddenly, a much larger black hole appeared in front of them. There was a murmuring sound from the hole, making people's bones chill. It was pitch black looking inside, and nothing could be seen. It was as though the mouth of a giant. What is this? A woman in her 30s looked at this hole. She was speaking with a shaky tone. It should be the sky pitch of Shinongjia. It's said that there are lots of these in the no-man's land. There are also mist regions. These places are where you can't come out from. I didn't think we would encounter it. Retreat quickly. The middle-aged man from before spoke again. Hearing his words, everyone retreated. Ning Qingxue also followed everyone to the side of a tent in fear. Finally, people gasped sighs of relief when they went back to the campsite. I actually encountered the sky ditch. This is too coincidental. What was that murmuring sound? People asked as soon as they went back to the tents. It's not a coincidence. There are many of these at Shinongjia. There's pretty much no living if you fall in one of those. And those murmuring sound, I suspect it's due to wind circulating inside, the middle-aged man said seriously. The youth who almost fell and finally caught his breath now that everyone was talking. He said, Almost lost my life there. No wonder there are so many people who have gone missing at Shinongjia. We're just at the outskirts. If we go in, 80% chance we'll lose our lives. PFDT, didn't you just say there was no danger but just time-consuming? Someone retaliated immediately. This youth lost his face and said, It seems I just know too little. At this moment, Chui Lin also came over with a bad face. The tourism company just notified us to get out and cancel the plan at the no man's land. Surprisingly, no one objected. Everyone was scared by this experience and felt adventure was not such a simple thing. The 20 or so people packed their bags and heard an even sharper howl from the ditches. This definitely wasn't made by the wind. Everyone looked at each other. After a long while, the middle-aged man said, Leave quick. That sound seemed to be coming over here. There are too many unknown dangers in Shinongjia. Let's go out first. No one objected and ran outside quickly. Although it was dark, but people ran quite fast. They didn't take much time to get out. When everyone came out of the no-man's land, they gradually calmed down. Count the people. We should go to the nearest tourist spot, the middle-aged man said. Although Chui Lin was the tour guide, she seemed a bit nervous and started to count people. 21. We're missing one. Chui Lin's voice was shaky. Obviously, she knew what one person missing meant. The middle-aged man immediately said, "Let me count. 1, 2, we're indeed missing one." Everyone looked around to check who didn't come out. "Call the police. We can't go back in. It's too dangerous." Zhang Chong didn't come out. People immediately realized who was left behind. The young guy who stepped into the ditch? The middle-aged man immediately found out who Zhang Qing was. How come it had to be him who didn't make it? Was it because of the sky ditch? Someone had asked the question no one dared to ask. The people immediately sunk into silence. No one brought up to go back and look for Zhang Chong. This thing seemed eerie. "I think Zhang Chong might be scared and lost his way running outside." The middle-aged man said something even if he didn't really believe it. This many people didn't get lost, but he did. Chui Lin worriedly said, "What do we do now? Do we go back and look for him?" No one replied. Everyone was scared of the sky ditch. No one had the guts to go back in to find someone. Wait for the rescue team. No one wanted to go risk their lives for a stranger. Even the middle-aged man went quiet. After all, what just happened was too terrifying. Ning Qingxue followed them quietly to the nearest tourist spot. When everyone went in the hotel, the rescue team had went in. There were 2 tourist groups that followed the rescue team. Ning Qingxue finally understood the dangers of Shinnongjia. She even wanted to look under that cliff, but now, it seemed that before she got there, she would have lost her life. This wasn't something that could be done with courage. Sometimes, power was needed, and she didn't have that power now. She could no longer calm down, not being able to see if that person was Yimo. She came out to relax and hid Yimo's figure from her mind in the depths of her heart, but now, she felt her mood was even messier. Yimo's figure kept swinging around in front of her eyes. The moment he fell from the cliff became clearer and clearer. Did she think too much and thought of someone else as him? Otherwise, why did he go to that place? Ning Qingxue thought of Yimo's small medical case. Perhaps he was gathering herbs there. Chui Lin was still quite anxious. It was the first time someone has gone missing when she was a tour guide. "Chui Lin, I want to ask you something. Your company has a helicopter. Can it be rented to save others?" Ning Qingxue, however, came to Chui Lin and asked about this. Chui Lin shook her head and said, "The company rarely mobilized the helicopter. Renting it is impossible. It isn't a simple thing. They needed to verify there is a target and then apply for a permit. Otherwise, the helicopter can't be mobilized easily." Ning Qingxue had understood. To be honest, the helicopter was just a way of making people feel safe. It was useless when something really happened. With this occurrence, no one had the mood to play. The tour group went back to U-State the next day, but Ning Qingxue didn't go back with them. She went back to Ninghai. She knew it was a dream to go back to that cliff with her own ability. Plus, she wasn't even sure if that person was EMO. Perhaps she thought about EMO so much that even a figure was recognized as EMO by her. Even if she really went and that person was EMO, he wouldn't be alive falling from such a high cliff. Although she really wanted to ask for a helicopter, but she couldn't even say what person she was saving. If only Qi Wanqing was here, her father would be able to help. The main purpose of going back to Ninghai was to confirm if the person she saw was EMO. Although she wasn't sure if EMO would come to Ninghai, she still wanted to go look at EMO's school. It was because this was the time to get the graduation certificate, so perhaps EMO would come back for it. Plus, she wanted to ask Su Jingwen about some things. Ning Qingxue went back to Ninghai and saw that flower in the pot was growing very well. She felt relieved. It seemed Su Wei looked after this grass quite well. But soon, she noticed something different. She saw that there were many small buds next to the grass. Who grew that? No, they were the same breed as the grass she grew. It just didn't look like it was growing very well. The moment she saw them, her mood was excited again. Did Yimo come back? Ning Qingxue felt her breaths were desperate. Chapter 196. Bottom of the Cliff. Chapter 196. Bottom of the Cliff. Ning Qingxue suddenly charged into the room. The room on the east side still had its door closed. Ning Qingxue had calmed down now. She felt she was getting crazy. How could Yimo come back? When that bead saved her life, she even felt she was getting further and further away from him, as though they weren't in the same world. Ning Qingxue carefully opened the room. There was some dust there. She sighed and started to clean up. She would ask about the grass buds when Su Wei came back. Ning Qingxue packed her things up. Su Wei hadn't come back yet. She was in an annoyed mood and wanted to walk outside. She subconsciously walked to the street where Yimo was selling fake medicine. Although the streets were still busy and the sky wasn't dark, the businessmen had started to gather. Ning Qingxue bought another golden cake and stood where Yimo had his stall. She sat down as though feeling Yimo's mood when he sat here. He must have been thinking if only there was a customer. Come have a look. Recipe passed down from ancestor. Cures all illness, headache, fever, external-internal injury, short-sightedness. There's only what you can't imagine, nothing I can't cure. Yimo's voice was still there. But where was he? Ning Qingxue bit down on the golden cake. It was still the from same store made by the same person. But today, the golden cake felt bitter. Was it missing something? Ning Qingxue stood up. She prepared to go see Su Jingwen tomorrow and then go to Ninghai University. At this moment, her phone rung. It was Su Jingwen. Qingxue, did you come back to Ninghai? Su Jingwen's tone was very crisp. She seemed to be in a good mood lately. MHM, did Mume tell you? I was preparing to come see you for something tomorrow, Ning Qingxue said subconsciously. She just got back to Ninghai today. Only Li Mume knew. Now that Su Jingwen also knew, Li Mume probably told her. Su Jingwen immediately replied, Yeah, where are you? I'll go to your place. I have some things too. Ning Qingxue didn't wait long at a cafe before Su Jingwen arrived. Qingxue, why do you look so emaciated? What happened? Su Jingwen thought about the questions she was going to ask. In her memory, Ning Qingxue cared a lot about her appearance, but now, her bleakness could be easily seen. Just what happened to her? Ning Qingxue shook her head and said after a while, Nothing, I just want to ask you one thing. You once told me that you bought the charms from a master. Do you know how to use it? Su Jingwen looked at Ning Qingxue in surprise, but she still answered, Yes, I've used quite a few. But now, I know who the person who sold them to me is. Is it Yimo? Ning Qingxue suddenly stood up. Su Jingwen looked at Ning Qingxue in shock. It's him. But Qingxue, how did you know? So it's true, Ning Qingxue murmured before sitting down again. Her eyes drifted off. By the way, you're with Yimo. He would teach you, Su Jingwen said saltily, but soon, she changed into a lighter tone. Is Yimo really not her Luotsong? Ning Qingxue shook her head but didn't speak as though she was thinking about something. At this moment, a tall youth walked into the cafe. Su Jingwen quickly stood up and waved her hand. Weizheng cousin, this way. The youth walked over and immediately saw Ning Qingxue, who was frowning. He felt his brain was blasted. He thought of Lin Daiyu. There was actually such woman in the world. He had always thought Jingwen was extremely pretty, but when he saw Ning Qingxue, he understood that there was someone prettier than Su Jingwen. The girl's pretty brows lightly frowned, and a few messy strands of hair made her seem more innocent. There wasn't even the slightest mark of makeup as she kept her natural face on. However, her face seemed emaciated, and her clothing were very casual. Who was this girl? Yimo woke up slowly and felt his body was full of pain. He immediately wanted to struggle to stand up. Crack, not good. It seemed he wasn't on the ground yet. As expected, he started to fall again. Luckily, the branch he landed on was already near the ground. Splat! Yimo fell to the ground. The ground was covered in thick leaves and mud, so it wasn't very hard. Yimo finally didn't get injured again, but immediately, the pain all over his body woke him up. He was indeed injured heavily. He subconsciously wanted to get some medical pills from his ring, but as soon as he moved his spirit sense, his head was cracking with pain. He almost fainted again. Yimo quickly stopped. What was this? He couldn't use his spirit sense. Was he too heavily wounded? Yimo looked at the wounds on his body. bleeding had stopped, but there was a fit of dizziness that made him want to drink water. Yemo sat down wanting to treat himself with qi. His dantian felt the same as his spirit sense. As soon as he used it, there was immense pain. What was this? Yemo looked at his body. Although there was a lot of bleeding, most wounds had healed itself. It seemed to be related to the herbs he usually consumed. At this moment, not only could he not use his spirit sense, but he also couldn't use qi to treat himself. If he continued like this, he would die at the bottom of this cliff. The two wounds that didn't heal were the long slash on his back and the one on his waist. It could be said that this sword saved him too. Although he was more heavily injured due to this sword, if Bienpa didn't throw it out, he might have fallen into a puddle of meat. It was due to this sword that brought him near the edge of the cliff. He could keep grabbing on things, and that saved his life. Luckily, this was the Shin-nong-jia. If it was somewhere else, the cliff wall would be barren and he would still die. Yemo looked at the long sword not far away and grabbed it over.